Managerly, prepare 2 sets of clothes for the cleaners here. I will be joining this guy at the same time. Bojo, if Managerly had only been shocked before, then he was completely shaken now. His throat moved back and forth. Young Master Qin, did I misunderstand your meaning? Asking the young master of the Qin family, who was extremely powerful in Jiang City, to be a cleaner in their house. This was simply asking for his life. Bojo didn't think it was reliable either. She leaned over and whispered, Brother Mo, aren't you a neat freak? How did you disguise yourself as a cleaner? I still have you. Qin Mo glanced at the clean and exquisite face in front of him, resisting the urge to pinch it. His pleasant voice was as usual. You can do the cleaning when the time comes. Bojo. She was only convinced by the Almighty for someone who could say such shameless words so calmly. Managerly couldn't hear their conversation. He stood at the side, his gaze drifting. He had heard that young Master Qin treated the youngster differently, but he hadn't dared to think that way. After all, the Qin family's teachings wouldn't allow such things to happen. Even though young Master Jiao had changed a lot, he was still a boy. Before this, Managerly hadn't expected the rumors to be true. After all, young Master Qin had never allowed anyone to whisper in his ear. I'll get someone to prepare it now. Managerly was a smart man. He knew when to speak up. Qin Mo nodded and didn't say anything else. By now, Managerly also understood that it was best to follow the procedure and try not to alert the enemy. The bathroom was restored to its original state. According to Qin Mo's instructions, there were plainclothes policemen patrolling the area. Especially when the cleaners went in, they had to follow them. Actually, it was easy to find out who had planted the drugs in the bathroom. But the important thing wasn't the person who planted the drugs but the person who gave them the drugs. Hence, they couldn't act rashly. They couldn't arrest the culprit immediately. They would use the bait to find more clues. That was Qin Mo's and Bojo's goal. Once again, the two of them had the same thought. The disguise was necessary. Actually, Qin Mo didn't have to do it personally. But it was obvious that someone hadn't learned his lesson. The night continued. No one knew what had happened in the bathroom. But the crowd had seen the police coming. If they left quietly, it would be suspicious. Hence, they walked into the main hall as though it was a routine inspection. Even though it was a routine inspection, the crowd was still a little restrained when they were having fun. After the police left, all of them released their natural instincts. Nightclubs were meant for people to drink and get drunk for the day. The dimmer the lighting, the more likely it was to be licentious. The boy from before had hooked up with an uncle. The uncle had a family and had a child. But that didn't stop him from asking him out. Moreover, he should have taken a liking to him. The boy glanced at the room card in his hand. His body slumped against the uncle's body. Society isn't fair to groups like us. I can understand how you feel. You definitely don't want to go home and see your wife's face. Regardless of whether it was a female or male mistress, they would always say the same thing. I don't have any feelings for her. Don't think that I have everything. Actually, I'm not happy at all. Does she know who you are? Of course not. I can't tell her. I can only relax outside like this. Sigh, I understand. The boy placed his hand on the uncle's chest. There was a deep meaning in his voice. I will accompany you today. The man grabbed his hand. He looked as though he wanted to go to the room immediately. When Bojo and Qin Mo passed by, they saw such a scene. The boy still felt that he was rather noble. He lifted his chin and followed the man anxiously. Bojo and Qin Mo weren't people who liked to express their opinions. But they still felt disgusted when they met such a man and a male mistress. This had nothing to do with sexual orientation. If you liked a man, don't get married. Since you are married and can have children, live a good life. If you don't want to, get divorced. He was such a scumbag. He had ruined a woman's life and yet he said that he was wronged. Did he even have any shame? But it was probably because there were too many animations and novels that beautified the relationship between men. That was why some people felt that true love was only between men. Even some men who were married used such ridiculous words as an excuse. Love didn't discriminate between genders. But betraying his wife and child. Regardless of whether he liked a man or a woman, he was a scumbag. Needless to say, the boy was debauched to a certain extent. This was the situation in the circle that was closer to reality. This was also why, even though Yun-Hu was in the circle, he didn't let Lin Feng come into contact with such things. He was worried that the guy would think that he liked him because he needed to solve something. He liked a certain guy because he had liked him since he was young. He liked Lin Feng as a person. After that, it was gender. Hence, when Bojio returned, she asked Yun-Hu a question in a low voice. Yun-Hu glanced over and said, "I won't get married. Even if a woman is willing to be with me, I don't want to harm her. If the name on the marriage certificate isn't that guy's name, it's useless to me." The more Bojio listened, the more she felt that her naive and sweet senior would be defeated by such a deep love. But Lin Feng probably didn't notice it at all. When Bojio and the others returned, she was whispering to Yun-Hu. She leaned over and pulled the youngster over. She was still holding a wine bottle in her hand. Then she grabbed her hair, looking extremely troubled. "There's something. Analyze it for me." "It's about who?" Bojio loved to analyze. "What is it?" "Actually, it isn't whose problem." Lin Feng had indeed drunk too much. He lowered his head and swayed. "I don't know what's wrong with my mother. Recently, she has been asking me not to touch who. Don't you think it's weird?" When Bojio heard this, she roughly understood what he meant. She laughed so hard that her shoulders shook. Mother Lin was too adorable. Only a biological mother would do something like that. "Little spade, why do you keep laughing? Analyze it for me." Lin Feng swayed again. Bojio reached out and patted his shoulder. "Senior, good luck. After all, even your biological mother thinks that you are the one trying to turn Almighty Yun gay and not the other way around." Of course, Bojio wouldn't say the last sentence. Good luck? What did he have to good luck for? Lin Feng's brain seemed to be stuffed with a lot of paste. Lin Feng's alcohol tolerance was surprisingly good. Other than the fact that he wanted to understand something, he couldn't think straight. Everything else was surprisingly quiet. After a short while, he fell asleep on the sofa hugging the wine bottle. Indeed, it was time to disperse. Bojio wanted to send Yao Yao back, but she sensed that Yao Yao had her own matters to attend to. She didn't need to send her back since someone was waiting for her. Uncle Ian and the others called for a cab. Only Bojio, Qin Mo, and Yun-Hu were left. Bojio watched as Lin Feng slept soundly on Yun-Hu's back. He was so drunk that he couldn't resist at all. It seemed like Senior Lin wasn't aware of what he was guarding against. Yun-Hu knew how painful it was to be woken up in the middle of sleep. Moreover, it was already very cold outside, so he decided to book a private room in the night. "I'll stay here with him for the night." "All right, Brother Mo and I will be leaving first." Bojio lifted her lips. She could tell that Almighty Yun had played a part in Senior Lin's drunkenness. Just as they left, Yun-Hu turned his head. Yun-Hu, who was carrying Yun-Hu, turned his head. That position made it easy for him to kiss him. His thin lips brushed past the corner of Lin Feng's mouth. At first, he thought everything was over. Who knew that he wasn't awake yet? His gaze wasn't fixed. His dazed expression challenged Yun-Hu's patience. "Where are we going? A competition? I haven't mastered my tower stealing skills." He was obviously still drunk. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to participate in a competition at this time. Lin Feng was really drunk. He was quieter. Even when Yun-Hu said, "Go to sleep," he didn't stand on end like he usually did. Instead, he looked at Yun-Hu cautiously. Instead, he nodded. "It's time to sleep after drinking too much." It wasn't easy for Lin Feng to remember this. Yunhu was clear about it. When Lin Feng was drunk, he wasn't as wary of him as he usually was. Hence, they could sleep together after a competition like before. Ever since this fellow knew his intentions, he didn't seem to avoid him on the surface, but in reality, he had restrained some of his intimate actions. Only when his thoughts were not so clear could he be so close to him like he was now. However, there was one thing that made Yunhu's gaze tremble after he closed the door to the private room. It was because he was taking off his clothes. It's so hot, where exactly is this? Why isn't there any air conditioning? Lin Feng said as he tore his collar, revealing a large patch of jade-like skin. Because of the alcohol, there was a faint pinkish tint to it. Forget it, I'm going to take a shower. Yes, a shower. It stinks, it's too smelly. Drunkards were not only defenseless. Similarly, they would release their natural instincts to a certain extent. As Lin Feng spoke, he lowered his head to undo his belt. Yunhu watched this scene. His feet seemed to be rooted to the ground. He had to clench his fists to suppress his urge. However, the drunk Lin Feng didn't notice it at all. He couldn't undo his pants. Seeing that his good brother was there, he walked over. His body was still swaying and his words were still stuttering. Help me, undo it. Why is it getting tighter the more I undo it? As Lin Feng spoke, he pulled Yunhu's hand over and placed it on his pants in a manly manner. He finally lifted his face. His white shirt was half unbuttoned, his skin as fair as jade and snow, matching his current requirements. Chapter 9:19. The night outside was getting darker and darker. In the military courtyard, at the Qin family's house, Movie Queenan, who had just landed, was sipping on her tea. She had booked a plane ticket so suddenly. Her tiredness only added to her charm. Which means Jiao has been sleeping at home for the past few days. Movie Queenan placed her teacup down and glanced at Madame Zhang. There were some things that Madame Zhang couldn't say. But Movie Queen Anne's heart skipped a beat because of her expression. I never expected them to have such feelings for each other. Madame Zhang didn't know what to say. After all, it wasn't easy to accept a man liking another man. Madame Zhang was just about to speak. Movie Queenan inhaled deeply and interrupted her. Let me think about it. Indeed, she had to think about it. She only had one son. There were people with similar sexual orientations in the entertainment industry. Movie Queenan had friends who were like that. But when such a thing happened to her son, she couldn't make a decision so quickly. But thinking about it carefully, she had never worried about her son since he was young. But as a mother, in order to pursue her career, she didn't take good care of the family. As a result, the child was born with a low need for relationships. When he was 5 or 6 years old, he would remind her to take care of herself because of her abnormal routine. It was hard for an ordinary child to mature so early. No matter what decision they made, her son wouldn't cry or make a fuss. Even then, he was sent to Los Angeles under his father's care. He didn't say anything. He had always been outstanding. In today's terms, it was a miracle that he didn't go astray. He was outstanding to the point that when that happened, it was then that Movie Queenan realized how much she owed her child all these years. Her son was indifferent and didn't care much about relationships. But once he cared, he wouldn't let go. Even she couldn't predict the consequences. What happened back then couldn't happen a second time. But she couldn't accept it immediately. For a moment, she wanted to blame the boy. But the thought of him being Jiao, she couldn't blame him. Every time she saw the youngster, she wanted to raise him as her second son. How could she bear to blame him? Wasn't it good to be brothers? Why did the plot go astray? The more Movie Queenan thought about it, the more worried she became. But she also understood that Jiao was probably not the one who took the initiative in this matter. She knew her son all too well. He could bend others, but if others tried to bend him, they would most likely be crippled. Or did her son have feelings for Joe that were different from other people from the beginning? Movie Queen was indeed a smart person. She wasn't just smart. In her position, she was more magnanimous than others and considered things from a comprehensive perspective. What's more, she knew her son. I still want to carry a grandson. Movie Queen looked at Madame Zhang, acting coquettishly like a daughter. Auntie Zhang understood. She also wanted to see young master have a young master one day. Movie Queen retracted her gaze. Instead of talking to Madame Zhang, she was persuading herself. But this is his life after all. What he wants is the most important. But will he be able to lead a good life in the future? You also know that Qin Mo doesn't seem to be in love, but once he is, his entire being will sink into it. Aunt Zhang was not in a position to give an answer. She knew that someone as wise as Madame did not need an answer from her. But if it's Joe, it's still acceptable. Movie Queen sighed. I never expected that one day, my Almighty would become my daughter-in-law. I really can't accept it. Madame Zhang. Madam, if boss heard what you said, it wouldn't be good, you know? That's good too. Movie Queen was serious. No one else has such a handsome daughter-in-law who can play games so well. In the future, I can poach Joe from Supreme Alliance and bring him into the entertainment industry to film a movie with me. By then, Mo wouldn't be able to stop me even if he wanted to since I'm his mother-in-law. Wait a minute, Joe should be my daughter-in-law and not my son-in-law, right? Madame Zhang replied, this should be. Even though she didn't know much about the relationship between boys, with young master's personality, he wouldn't give himself to anyone, right? After Movie Queen thought it through, she reverted to her usual temperament. She leaned against the sofa lazily, still wearing a long white dress with a pure red cloak. Her figure was perfect, her wide sleeves caressed her face, accentuating her beauty. She smiled excitedly. I'll ask Mo some other day, if he's the one below, that would be amazing. This was indeed Madame's idea. Madame Zhang couldn't help thinking while being impressed. Perhaps this was the difference between the Qin family and the Qin family. Only a family like the Qin family could raise someone like the Almighty. It wasn't without reason. It wasn't just money and power, it was also his way of thinking and values. Hence, there was only one Qin Mo in the entire world. That night, Qin Mo didn't return home. If he had returned, he might have been able to hear Movie Queen and Madame Zhang's conversation. Movie Queen thought that since the two kids had developed a certain level of relationship, she should visit Joe's mother. Should she pay Joe's mother a visit too? Movie Queen had always been a person of action. But the moment she stood up, she suddenly thought of something. She had agreed to the relationship between the two kids. But what about Joe's family? Movie Queen decided to test the waters. As for how she would do it, she had to think carefully. Since her son was already gay, she would rather find someone she didn't like. Joe was still more likable. Movie Queen had many friends, but she had never interacted with the Fu family. She didn't even know Joe's mother's name. It seemed like she had to find someone to find out more about it and get closer to her. Movie Queen's eyes lit up. Suddenly, she thought of something and called a friend. Her friend specialized in plastic surgery and women's clubs. She was famous for being rich and well-connected in the socialite circle in Jiang City. But when she saw Movie Queen's call, she became as happy as a child. Sisterin, why are you so free to contact me? Have you finished filming? I'm taking a few days off. Movie Queen smiled faintly. Isn't there a gathering at your place? It seems like all the ladies in Jiang City will be there. I want to join in the fun. Hearing that, the man felt as if he had won the lottery. Mizzen, are you serious? You're coming? Of course. Movie Queen retorted. When have I ever lied? No, I just can't believe it. Mizzen is coming. I have to ask someone to prepare the best red wine. The man was so happy that even the people around him were curious about what had happened. Who was Mizzen? After she hung up the phone, a few rich ladies asked, who is she? A few of the rich ladies asked, "Who is this?" Even our female CEO treats him with respect. She chuckled lightly and waved to her female friends. The group of women leaned over and heard her say a name. Everyone's expression changed. "Gosh, how do you know her?" "I have some connections with my father." "Is she really as pretty as she looks in the movies?" "You just called her sister, but why does she look younger than you?" "Pfft, she's prettier in person." "But I heard that celebrities usually have people behind them." "Could it be that she's one of them?" Her gaze dimmed. "She isn't. It's fine if you think about others in the past, but don't think about Sisterin. Be careful or you'll get yourself into trouble." "It's my fault, it's my fault. I was just asking, don't be angry. Since the movie queen is coming, shouldn't we change the guest list? Don't invite those small businesses, like the one from the fried bun shop and the one from the countryside with the surname he. People like them will lower their standards." She was a businessman. Even though she wasn't the best, she had basic etiquette. "I've already sent out the invitations, but the guest list won't be changed. Also, don't say such things in front of Sisterin, she doesn't like it." "Are you serious? How can a celebrity be so ignorant?" "She isn't ignorant, you'll understand when you meet her. She doesn't need to look at her family background like you and me." "Juan, what are you saying?" "I'm being too. I was talking about you and me, I'm included. After all, she was the CEO. It's for your own good, there will be too many people at the gathering. Besides, He Honghua's son has been doing well recently, even my daughter is asking for his autograph." "You should change your mindset. I know you used to be close to Su Mei and didn't like He Honghua, but it's different now. She hasn't done anything bad to you, so it's good for you to give her a way out. He's just a gamer, how good can he be? Can he be compared to my son? No matter what, he has entered the industry and is a celebrity. Juan, can I bring my son to meet movie queenin?" "Sure, but Guorong, don't be too obvious, it's just a gathering tomorrow." "Don't worry." Even though he said so, Yang Huan was still worried. With Guorong's attitude, it was hard to believe that she wouldn't do anything. But the gathering couldn't be rescheduled. It wasn't easy for Sisterin to come, so she couldn't let her leave in disappointment. On the other side, after movie queen hung up, she started to admire her intelligence. Using this method, it wouldn't be too abrupt to bump into Mrs. He at the party without anyone noticing. She had to buy a gift. Forget it, she couldn't buy a ready-made one, it wasn't sincere. "Oh right, I have a bracelet that doesn't care about skin color, madam, he will definitely like it." Madame Zhang watched silently as her madam prepared for tomorrow's meeting, preparing the gift and trying on the gown. It was an indescribable feeling. Was she already going through this process so soon? Madame hadn't agreed at the start. Actually, movie queen had thought it through because she didn't want to see her son continue living like before. The youngster's appearance had changed a lot. That was the first time she had seen her son care about someone. That was enough, she didn't care about the gender. Outside the window, the trees swayed like a painting. The Fu family's villa wasn't guarded like the Qin family's. Chen Xiaodong hugged the blanket, asking his young master once more, "Young Master Qin, are you really going to stay here?" Bo Jiu couldn't do anything about it. After leaving the nightclub, the Almighty had given her two choices, he could either sleep at his place or hers. Bo Jiu had analyzed the situation and decided it was safer to sleep at her place. That way, she could use the excuse that her bed was a single bed and let the Almighty sleep in the guest bedroom. This time, he had indeed miscalculated. He Honghua was the happiest, she had prepared a pile of supper. He Honghua was still the same. Even though she came from the countryside, she was still magnanimous and candid. Her family had always been like this, they didn't eat any delicacies but the food they made had to be Jio's favorite. Qin Mo didn't come for nothing, a casual question had allowed him to learn a lot about her childhood. But Jio is different now. In the past, he wouldn't be able to take anything bitter. Now, he likes to drink coffee and even bought a piano. I wonder how much he has learned behind my back. All mothers love to praise their children. He Honghua was no exception. The moment she mentioned Zhou, her round face would be filled with smiles. Qin Mo's hand paused. Even if it was a second personality, his taste buds wouldn't change. What exactly was wrong with her? The conversation between the two did not continue. Firstly, it was too late. Secondly, Bo Jiu had come down and interrupted their conversation. She had overheard their conversation when she had walked over. If she continued, the Almighty would only be suspicious of her. The room is ready, Brother Mo should rest early. Bo Jiu arched a brow. Coincidentally, Qin Mo wanted someone to check on something, so he replied faintly, all right. Bo Jiu smiled at the unexpected success. As expected, her house was relatively safer. After Qin Mo left, Bo Jiu started discussing serious matters with He Honghua. Bo Jiu started to talk business with He Honghua. Mom, do you have the school's contact details? If you do, can you help me contact our year's director? Year's director? He Honghua thought that something had happened. Is it because you've been focusing on the competition recently that the school isn't happy about it? Bo Jiu smiled faintly. Mom, it's not that, I'm looking for accommodation. Accommodation? He Honghua's voice rose sharply. Bo Jiu immediately reached out and covered her lips, afraid that the person in the guest room upstairs would hear them. Bo Jiu pressed her fingers against her lips and made a shushing gesture. She lowered her handsome face and said, Mom, I'll only stay for 2 weeks. If I'm not used to it, I'll come back. The first half of her sentence was true, but the second half. In 2 weeks, both the National League and Fu Zhongyi would end. Chapter 920. The dorms are all guys, how are you going to stay there? He Honghua was worried. Why did you suddenly decide to stay in school? You've been staying at home for so many years. Don't worry, I won't be discovered. The beds are bunk beds, I'll get a top bunk. Bo Jiu hugged He Honghua's soft shoulders. I'm in my 2nd year of high school, staying in school will give me more time to study. Besides, it's a crucial period for the Fu Corporation, so I won't stay at home. That way, you won't have to cook for me. You've gotten skinnier from the competition, and now that you're resting for 2 days, you have to eat at home. He Honghua was adamant about this. Bo Jiu smiled. I'll come back during the holidays, once a week. In reality, she would still come back. It would be easier for her to investigate in school and hide her identity. But in the Fu family, there was a temporary disguise room she had created which would make it easier for her to do many things. But she wouldn't tell He Honghua about it. She didn't set up the internet terminal at the Fu family's house because she was worried that someone would target He Honghua if anything went wrong. Firstly, she wasn't sure who the crime squad was, and secondly, the person who impersonated her hadn't been caught. She couldn't risk He Honghua. In the past, she had no worries because she was alone. Now, she had something she wanted to protect, be it Supreme Alliance or this mother in front of her. The more He Honghua looked at her Jiu, the more handsome she became. She hadn't realized it in the past, but now that she had her own plans for every decision, she felt both comforted and melancholic. Are you free these 2 days? Will you be at home? Mom has a gathering I want to bring you to tomorrow. Tomorrow. Bo Jiu hesitated. He Honghua immediately asked, are you busy? It's fine. I do have something tomorrow, but when is the gathering? I'll try to finish it as soon as possible. Bo Jiu always doted on He Honghua. The middle-aged He Honghua enjoyed this. Tomorrow night, it's a gathering organized by a friend. They are all from all walks of life in Jiang City. I just took over some of the Fu family's decisions, and it wouldn't be appropriate if I didn't go. You know a lot while Mom doesn't know anything. I'll feel more at ease with you around. All right. Bo Jiu glanced at the time. Where is it? I should be able to finish my work by 7 o'clock. Then, I can go in with Mom to get some food and drinks. Who wouldn't like having such a child by their side? He Honghua's chubby face beamed with joy. You must like that place too. Didn't you always want me to bring you to these upper-class gatherings? Now we finally have a chance. MMH, Bojiu replied. She didn't deny what had happened in the past. The more differences there were, the more information would be exposed. Some things were better left unsaid. If it was a party, it seemed that she had to bring an extra suit with her. Because he was moving with the Almighty, he had to pay attention to certain things. To avoid getting more and more information that could be used against me, hence, the next day, when she woke up early, she met Director Huang and Manager Li and received the set of cleaning uniform. She didn't show any signs of familiarity. Instead, he was like a novice in disguise, struggling for half an hour before coming out of the changing room. Qin Mo was already waiting on the sofa. Although he was wearing a cleaner's uniform, it didn't reduce his nobility. Instead, because of the blue and white uniform, he was especially eye-catching. Bojiu arched a brow, her lips lifting into a smile. She whistled. Handsome. Qin Mo glanced up at the youngster. Her head was still covered with a head of messy silver hair. She looked like a princess who had just showered, shaking her hair to attract his attention. Come over. Qin Mo's voice was calm. When Bojiu walked over, he stood up, placing his fingers on the youngster's head. His long fingers tidied her silver hair, the contours of his face similar to his voice, carrying a hint of nobility and aloofness. You're already so old and you don't even know how to comb your hair? Manager Li and Director Huang were still at the side. The latter was already used to it since he had always been bullied in the police station. The former didn't know if he should look at the two of them or somewhere else. Young Master Qin was so blatant with his homosexuality. Bojiu glanced up. She didn't think much of it since he was just combing her hair. Qin Mo didn't think much of it either. Wasn't it natural for him to do such things for the person he wanted to raise? Because they were so close to each other. Bojiu could see clearly that when the Almighty lowered his lids, his eyelashes were like black feathers. They swept over her, tempting her to reach out and touch them. The reason Qin Mo lowered his lids was because he was tidying someone's collar. Bojiu was different from Qin Mo and it could be seen from the way they dressed. The youngster's style was always casual and cool. On the other hand, Qin Mo's clothes were straight and clean. With such a sense of abstinence, a thought would enter Bojiu's mind from time to time. She wasn't sure if she wouldn't be able to control herself and do something that would cause her endless trouble when she left. Bojiu adjusted her collar. Tight? Qin Mo asked. Bojiu replied, MMH. Qin Mo reached out, adjusting it slightly. Manager Li coughed. Young Master Qin, young Master Jiu, it's only 7 a.m. Do you want to have breakfast before heading over? It's fine, we'll be eating with our new colleague. Bojiu smiled, a hint of mischief in her voice. It's easier to get information at the dining table. Manager Li. He hadn't expected young Master Qin to like this style. Besides, Manager Li, you don't have to follow us, just find an ordinary employee from the Human Resources Department. Don't reveal our identities, the more clueless they are, the more natural they will be. Bojiu sat on the chair, bending down to tie her shoelaces. When she glanced up, she was already a refreshed cleaner. Both Qin Mo and Bojiu had made some changes to their appearances, basically to lower their attractiveness. Qin Mo's face was too handsome, it wasn't easy to change. They could only start with the hairstyle. They couldn't tell if it was green or blue, but it dyed the strands of hair in front, giving it a hint of non-mainstream appeal. This was more like the youngster who had left home during his Chinibu period. But the advantage was that his face was good, it didn't look too ugly. Most importantly, it could change his aura, especially Qin Mo's. This way, people wouldn't be resistant. The Jiang group treated their employees well, hence, the dormitory wasn't too bad. But this was Jiang City, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, so they couldn't expect it to be good. The rooms weren't facing the sun, most of them were from other places, and it was an old building that hadn't been demolished. There were all sorts of clothes hanging on the railings and the smell wasn't good. From the first floor to the second, there was the smell of mold. Bojo wasn't bothered by her surroundings. She had assumed that a noble young master like the Almighty wouldn't be able to take it. But when she turned back, she realized that the Almighty's expression hadn't changed. He had blended in perfectly with the surroundings, just that he didn't speak much. He was as indifferent as ice to the employee who had brought them here, who was winking at him. That was when Bojo remembered that the Almighty had mentioned that he had grown up in the military. Even if he had forgotten the days they had spent together, it should be true. Which meant that the Almighty had probably received special training. Bojo smiled. That would be the year she had first crossed hands with the Almighty. It wasn't strange that she had been discovered. On the other hand, the employee's face turned cold when the handsome newcomer ignored her. He was just a migrant worker. She had seen plenty of arrogant people, but in the end, he had still succumbed to reality. Forget it, she didn't want to force him. This is the room. The employee stood outside the door with a key in her hand. There are 2 beds left, split them and see who sleeps. Just as the employee was speaking, a few men stood outside the door, washing up. The few men who were standing in the public area to wash up all looked over. After all, it was rare to see such a good-looking youngster here. Actually, the structure of the building was similar to the underground cellars in the capital. In the underground cellars, washing up was shared and there would be a queue when there were many people. Manager, where did these 2 come from? One of the middle-aged men spat the mouthwash in his mouth into the sink. He glanced over and laughed heartily, carrying with him the warmth of a foreigner. He was probably from around here since his accent hadn't changed. Many people said that the city was developing too quickly and that people would become apathetic due to the pressure. However, this problem didn't exist for the middle-aged man who wanted to work and earn his hard-earned money. He was very passionate. The employee replied calmly, "They are temporary workers from outside and are in charge of cleaning. You can bring them along today and see if they are suitable." "Sure." "Oh right." The employee seemed to have thought of something, pointing towards Bojo's hair. "If you really want to keep them, make your hair color more normal. Our nightclub is different from the other nightclubs, we have high standards for our employees." Bojo didn't know that nightclubs regulated their employees' hairstyles. Jiang's management was rather interesting. "All right." The employee glanced over at Qin Mo. The employee glanced at Qin Mo again. Seeing that he didn't react, she couldn't be bothered with him and headed downstairs. No one in the tube-shaped apartment suspected Qin Mo and Bojo because of their daily behavior. But since they were new, there weren't many people who came over to talk. There were some who stayed in the same room. The middle-aged man walked towards Bojo with a basin. After taking 2 glances, he said with pity, "How old are you? Why are you working at such a young age? Why aren't you studying properly?" "Don't worry, big brother, I'm already an adult." Bojo smiled. "I'm just a little hungry. I've been away from home for a long time and I want to eat something hot." The middle-aged man immediately said, "Let's go in and put your things down. I'll introduce you to the people in the same room and then we'll go eat together. The canteen made Big Manta today, I'm sure you'll like it. She likes to eat everything." At this moment, Qin Mo spoke. His magnetic voice attracted the middle-aged man's attention. "Do you know each other?" Bojo smiled. "We came out to work together. There's no work at home." Her talent in imitating language was unparalleled. She had only heard a few sentences and she had already learned the intonation. The setting of a young internet addict that he had made up at the beginning was now useless. She might as well mix the truth with falsehood to make it easier for others to believe her. The middle-aged man heard Bojo's accent and felt closer to her. "That's right, there's no work at home. Come, these are the 2 beds, it's the same as some schools, bunk beds. The one beside you is also from our hometown. One of them doesn't have good hearing so he has to raise his voice when he speaks. The other one loves to drink and the last one doesn't live here anymore. I don't know where he got his money from, but he will definitely bring us alcohol and cigarettes when he comes back. The big brother was really passionate towards Bojio and the others. In order to avoid suspicion, Bojio gave a brief explanation of everyone's situation. In reality, her focus was on the last one. Chin Mo glanced up and glanced at the bed with the half-folded blanket. The two of them exchanged glances. They had a tacit understanding. It's the weekend and everyone is working the whole day. He will definitely be back soon. You guys are in luck. The middle-aged man didn't know that it wasn't a matter of luck. Chin Mo and Bojio had chosen to sneak over today because they knew that everyone was working the whole day. The two of them were led to the canteen by the big brother. The canteen was extremely noisy. Fortunately, the phone the big brother was using was made in China and the volume was very loud. The moment he glanced up, he saw Chin Mo and Bojio's target. Zhao Debao. Zhao Debao was tall and sturdy. If Bojio and Chin Mo hadn't come, he would have been the youngest cleaner. He was eating his mantou in big mouthfuls when he saw two unfamiliar faces. He frowned. Chin Mo took note of her reaction. They are on guard. Their first reaction is to suspect us. That was why one shouldn't provoke a psychologist. Subtle expressions could read one's mind. Zhao Debao was actually afraid, but he felt that even if the police were to investigate, they wouldn't be able to trace it back to a cleaner like him. But the supplier warned them to be more vigilant. These two, the big brother replied passionately, we are from the same hometown. There isn't much work at home, so we came out to earn some money. They came to Jiang City to earn money at such a young age? Zhao Sanbao sized up the two of them. Bojio and Chin Mo allowed him to size them up. The former scratched her head in embarrassment. She didn't take the initiative to speak to Zhao Sanbao. Instead, she asked the middle-aged man, Big brother, where do we get the mantou? My cousin and I are about to starve to death. Zhao Sanbao had his own thoughts. If there was someone here who would listen to him completely, he would be able to release the mantou from the other washrooms at the same time. The two of them didn't seem to be a problem. It would be better to rope them in after some time. With that in mind, Zhao Sanbao took out his food card. I have mantou, you don't have a food card. Take it, Brother Zhao is treating you. This. Bojio glanced at the food card but didn't take it. Brother Zhao is giving it to you, just take it. The big brother was always enthusiastic. Chapter 921. 700 to 800 a day? Is there really such a good business? Bojio's eyes lit up, but she was still hesitant. That's impossible. Zhao Sanbao knew that the two of them were inexperienced. The more inexperienced they were, the easier it would be for them to help him. Why is it impossible? Brother Zhao will tell you the truth, he sells cigarettes and earns the difference in price. Cigarettes? Bojio lowered her lids, a smile on her face. We'll follow Brother Zhao from now on. Sure. Zhao Sanbao also had other reasons for using these two people. Recently, the police had been too strict. It was relatively safer to let these two people stand guard. The most important thing was that if there was any sudden inspection, he could let these two people stand guard for him and let them carry the goods. If the situation was not right, he could still escape. At 1:30 p.m., Zhao Sanbao found someone to cover for him. He brought the two of them out of the shop. This was the perfect time to take the goods because there would be a cleaning at 6 p.m. He could take the opportunity to place more goods. It had to be said. The drug dealers at the bottom of the hierarchy would always choose places that no one would expect. In an alley near Yisei, there were many people coming and going. All kinds of people were from other places who came here to work. It was a temporary factory that was still under construction. On the right was a makeshift house. Zhao Sanbao didn't allow them to follow. Wait here. Okay, Brother Zhao, Bojio replied. The two of them looked at Zhao Sanbao's back as he left, then looked at each other. Cousin, do you have a lighter and cigarettes? Qin Mo knew she had something to say. Qin Mo knew she had something to say. He took out a pack of cigarettes and placed one between his lips. He took out a pack of cigarettes and put a cigarette between his lips. It was windy. Bo Jiu lowered her body and leaned over. It's not a small place, but it should be their distribution department. MMH, Qin Mo replied, watching as the youngster lit the cigarette. His voice was calm. You know quite a lot. MMH, Qin Mo replied. He watched as the youngster lit his cigarette and said faintly, you know quite a lot. Bo Jiu paused and laughed. I'm smart and handsome. At this moment, Qin Mo wouldn't ask too much about it. They had a basic tacit understanding. They would first deal with the outside before dealing with the inside. He threw us here to test us. Qin Mo took a puff of his cigarette and reached out to pinch the youngster's face. He looked very handsome. Keep your shameless words to yourself. Bo Jiu didn't expect her face to be pinched. She held the cigarette in her mouth in a daze. Then she arched a brow and reached out to rub her face. The two men did not call or inform anyone that they were there. It was because the angle they were standing at was facing the glass window of the simple room. This made it easy for the people inside to observe the people outside. Zhao Sanbao definitely wouldn't let them stand in this position casually. As expected. Inside the simple room, a man with tattoos pulled open the blinds and looked at Bo Jiu and Bo Jiu. You still dare to bring someone here when the limelight is so close? They don't know anything. They're just two country bumpkins who have never seen the world. They can't imagine what we're doing. Also, look at their outfits. They're so young. They can't be police. The tattooed man narrowed his eyes and put on his mask. He didn't say anything else. Unbeknownst to them, their conversation was being broadcasted to the crime squad. Zhao Sanbao would never have expected Bo Jiu to plant a small listening device on him the moment they first met. Now, there were more than 10 cars with police plates removed. They were waiting for the right time to act. Chapter 922. The tattooed man's phone rang. There was only one message on it. There's something wrong with the person in front of you, there's an ambush around, hurry up and retreat. The tattooed man narrowed his eyes, his expression changing. He pulled Zhao Sanbao over, his gaze fierce. Zhao Sanbao didn't understand. The tattooed man inhaled deeply, patting his face lightly. Get the two brothers outside to come in, let's have a good talk. Since there was an ambush, he had to think of a way to save his life. It was safest to have one or two hostages. Zhao Sanbao didn't know what had happened. He was still saying, is it safe to let them in? What if they know something and go out and spread the news? Go get them. At this moment, the tattooed man didn't think Zhao Sanbao was being considerate. Instead, he felt that there was something wrong with his identity, which was why he didn't want innocent people to be implicated. Zhao Sanbao didn't mind, he walked out and waved towards them. Qin Mo threw the cigarette butt into the rubbish bin, his voice calm. There's something wrong. Indeed. Bo Jiu's gaze dimmed. The two of them stuffed a hand into their pockets, walking through the sand, looking suave. Zhao Sanbao was still thinking about how to get the goods. He hadn't expected his two underlings to enter. Someone locked the door behind them. Ka-cha. The tattooed man glanced up at the three of them, his gaze sending a chill down Zhao Sanbao's spine. Brother Long, this is... Before Zhao Sanbao could finish his sentence, the tattooed man whipped out a gun, causing his face to turn pale. Brother Long, the tattooed man was still wearing a mask, speaking slowly. There's something wrong with one of you. Zhao Sanbao instinctively turned towards Bo Jiu and the others. Brother Long, I'm stupid, I really didn't expect them to be suspicious. The person I'm talking about. The tattooed man raised his hand. You. Zhao Sanbao's legs turned to jelly when the gun was pointed at him. When he had been transporting the drugs, he hadn't considered the possibility of being devoured by the evil dragon. Brother Long, how could there be a problem with me? The tattooed man didn't listen to him at all. He said coldly, search him. Yes. The person next to him pressed Zhao Sanbao against the wall and scanned his body with a seemingly simple but professional metal scanning device. Beep beep beep, when the voice rang out, Zhao Sanbao had no idea what was going on. What is this? The tattooed man's eyes turned cold. And you say you're fine. There was a cracking sound. His shoes trampled over it heavily. Listen to me, Brother Long, you, bang. Before Zhao Sanbao could finish his words, the bullet directly pierced through his chest. It was as if killing a person was nothing to the tattooed man. However, he did not want to make a move here. After all, this was not the Golden Triangle. It would be very troublesome to be targeted by the police. However, Zhao Sanbao had been in contact with him for too long. If he had really been bribed by the police and revealed his information, it would not be safe. It was better to kill him. At this moment, Bojiu and Qin Mo didn't move. They were like two inexperienced kids who were shocked by the situation in front of them. Boss, what do we do after we catch them? The person at the side asked. What about the two of them? The tattooed man wiped his gun. Scan them too. See if there are any problems. Yes. When the scanner slid past Bojiu, Qin Mo's gaze wavered slightly. Boss, there's nothing. Boss, there's nothing. Nothing? Even Qin Mo arched a brow and looked towards the youngster. No one else could see their exchange of glances. Bojiu lowered her head. She didn't say a word, but the smile that covered her trembling lips showed that she had been prepared for this. That's right, the tapping device on her body had already been transferred to the underling when he pushed her into the room. And without anyone noticing, the tattooed man glanced at Zhao Sanbao, who was lying on the ground. Carry this person out. Lock the two of them up as hostages. There are police outside. They can be used as life-saving amulets. If the tattooed man had seen Qin Mo before, he would never have made such a decision. He would never make such a decision. Instead, he would just raise his gun and kill him. It was a pity he didn't know how difficult it was to deal with the two people he had decided to tie up. The Key Case Investigation Unit saw everything that happened here, including the gunshot. At this moment, none of the crime squad members had reacted as deeply as Director Huang. How had he noticed something was wrong? And it was Qin Mo who had thrown out the bait. When Qin Mo and the others had just arrived, they had sent him a message, asking him to create an identity for Zhao Sanbao and announce it to everyone, saying that he was a police informant. The news had only been out for a short period of time and the other party had already found out about their actions. What did that mean? It meant that everything was as Qin Mo had said. There was a problem in the crime squad. Director Huang's gaze dimmed. His mood wasn't good enough. At this moment, the newly arrived criminologist was still boasting, now that there's a problem with the informant, it's enough to show how cruel the drug trafficker is. I'll ask my friend in America to investigate his background. However, based on the analysis of his behavior, a typical local wouldn't be so cruel. He looks like a desperado, so we must not let him escape. As for the two hostages, go and check if they're really innocent. Who knows, it might be a trick played by the other party. Director Huang bolted upright. We have to ensure the safety of the hostages, everything else is a small matter. Are you saying that such a huge drug trafficking case is a small matter? The psychologist questioned before raising his hands. I understand. We have to protect them first, let's talk about the rescue plan. Director Huang knew that he wasn't on the same wavelength as the foreigner, hence, he alighted from the command car, heading towards the scene. In the simple house, Qin Mo and Bojiu were tied together with a rope. Their legs weren't tied because they still had to be brought along. Boss, what should we do? Are there policemen everywhere? One of them seemed to be panicking. The tattooed man raised his gun, leaning against the window as he watched the commotion outside, his lips curling into a vicious smile. Get a megaphone, we can negotiate with them. The man obeyed, his palms sweating due to his nervousness. What are you afraid of? Don't you know how many bombs are buried around here? A vicious glint flashed past the tattooed man's eyes. We'll blow up anyone who enters. Bojo and Chin Mo, who were tied together, glanced down. They seemed to have a telepathic connection. Their gazes were in the same direction. It was a small remote control on the table. There wasn't a television or air conditioner in the room. This meant that the remote control was the key. Bojo and Chin Mo had always done things differently. If not, Bojo wouldn't have changed Director Huang's arrangements and moved the listening device. The tattooed man's words were clearly heard by Director Huang. This time, only Director Huang could hear the contents of the listening device. Hence, it was a top secret. But it was this sentence that sent chills down Director Huang's spine. He immediately turned to the people who were about to rush in. Stop the mission, stand by. What's the situation? Director Huang, we have to hurry to save the hostages and catch the culprit. Time is of the essence. The new criminologist was dressed in a suit, looking out of place. Director Huang knew that there was a spy in the crime squad, but he couldn't reveal the fact that there were bombs in the construction site. Because once he revealed it, the other party would suspect young Master Qin and the youngster's identity. If they were hostages, there wouldn't be any danger. But if they were from the police, the tattooed man would definitely kill one of them. But if they didn't say anything, how were they going to start the rescue? Or, could they only trust in that person's ability? They weren't sure where the bombs were buried. But there were more than 30 workers at the construction site. Even if they wanted to evacuate, they would need time. The radius of the explosion couldn't be predicted. What was more worrying was the kindergarten beside the construction site. Director Huang reached out to grab the few strands of hair he had left. Report to the higher-ups, it's classified, I'll report the current situation to General Qin. They had to send the special forces over. Then they would choose a long-range kill. They needed a sniper. However, before Director Huang could pick up his phone, a special forces soldier dressed in camouflage jumped down from a Land Rover, carrying a long black bag on his back. Director Huang. You are? Director Huang couldn't remember such a person. The special forces soldier was a man of few words. Aardwolf, young Master Qin sent me over, I think Director Huang needs a sniper. With that, he reached his hand out, allowing Director Huang to take a look at his unit number. It was the lightning symbol. Only those in high positions would know what it meant. It was the symbol of the International Special Forces. Why was it here? Director Huang straightened his back, wanting to explain the situation. Aardwolf glanced sideways and said in a calm tone, I already know. I need you guys to lure the other party to the window during the negotiation. However, it depends on the situation. Young Master Qin said that this person is a very important breakthrough point. Try to capture him alive. I will act according to the situation. With that, Aardwolf tore open the bag. It was an inch-caliber sniper rifle. Under ideal circumstances, it could shoot a human head at a distance of 2,000 meters without any adjustments. Give the order. Director Huang, who had been robbed of the chance to speak, finally believed that Qin Mo had sent them over. But more importantly, how did he know the drug dealers were negotiating with the police? Aardwolf frowned, placing the rifle down. The window is too small, it will be difficult to stop them, we might not be able to kill them. Director Huang's face fell. There are schools nearby. Director Huang. Aardwolf lowered his voice. At such a time, we can only trust young Master Qin. Director Huang stilled. Indeed, at such a time, he could only trust that person. He was the person who could single-handedly subdue a serial killer when he was still in high school. The new criminologist also recognized the gun that Coyote was carrying. At this moment, he was much quieter. Hence, he became much quieter as he realized something wasn't right. It was obvious that his realization had come a little late. No one in the simple house cared about the two people who were trembling in fear. The tattooed man had a total of 5 subordinates, all of them moving the goods and money. Be it the money or goods, it was a staggering amount. They were packed in luggage, piling on top of each other. Hence, they wouldn't notice the blade protruding from Bojo's sleeves. The blade was small, but it was useful in such a situation. The only person who noticed the youngster's movements was Chin Mo. Both of them had a tacit understanding. The moment Bojo moved, Chin Mo's long legs bent over, blocking her perfectly. Even if someone glanced over, they would see Chin Mo and not Bojo's movements. To Bojo, handcuffs were more convenient than ropes. After all, in such an era, few people would use ropes to tie people up. Simply put, she was good with machinery. Returning to the most primitive method required some time. Chin Mo took one look at the youngster's expression and knew she wasn't good with it. He moved his fingers, signaling for her to pass the blade to him. Bojo arched a brow. They touched. Strangely, when the blade was in the Almighty's hands, sparks seemed to fly. In less than 10 seconds, the ropes around her hands loosened. The two of them didn't stand up immediately after regaining their freedom. Chin Mo swept a glance at the two men holding the rifle before his gaze landed on the remote control. Bojo nodded. The next moment, they stood up simultaneously. The person closest to them was about to raise his gun when Chin Mo swept his long legs and leaned forward. The blade landed heavily on the person's wrist that was holding the gun. Ah! The person screamed in pain, attracting everyone's attention. The other man also raised his gun, but it was too late. The young man raised his leg and kicked the man's right hand accurately. Then, with a loud crack, the other party's knees bent, and he fell to the ground. After that, the two of them dodged to the left at the same time. It was because the tattooed man had turned around and fired 2 shots at them. The youngster's movements were always beautiful and smooth. The tattooed man cursed. His first reaction was to reach for the remote control. At this moment, Chin Mo was already holding the gun. Just as the tattooed man was about to raise his hand, he fired a shot. Bang! The gunshot fired in all directions. The tattooed man retracted his hand in pain. The youngster kicked the wall with her long leg. Using the recoil, she pounced forward, her palms on the table. With a somersault, she managed to grab the remote control. Chapter 923. There was a loud swoosh. It came from the blade in Chin Mo's hand. When it flew out, it was bound to cut his fingers. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a point of impact. But it was the wrist that was holding the gun that was cut. Ah! A painful cry rang out. The two men held onto their right hands. Just as they were about to raise their guns again, Chin Mo's gun was pointed at the tattooed man. Chin Mo's gun was already aimed at the tattooed man on the ground. He stood there, his left hand holding the gun. His right hand was dangling, blood dripping from his fingertips. However, this didn't affect his unique nobility. You don't want your boss to live? They were just 2 underlings after all. The moment they saw their boss being pointed at with a gun, they froze on the spot. The tattooed man clenched his teeth tightly. Even the remote control had fallen into the hands of the other party. This matter had cut off his last path of escape. His face was filled with unwillingness and hostility. Who exactly are you? Be it the youngster's skills or that beautiful flying knife, it wasn't something an ordinary person could do. They weren't even policemen. The tattooed man hadn't expected to land in someone's hands. He had been living a carefree life for so many years and had never suffered a setback. Moreover, he was in a continent with such low efficiency. Even though it was difficult for them to move the goods in terms of safety, in terms of skills and setup, as long as it wasn't the special forces, no one would be able to do anything to them. Outside the simple room, Director Huang was still worried. He could still hear sounds a moment ago, but after the gunshot, there must have been a problem with the listening device, as all he could hear was the sound of gunshots. But he had forgotten that they had a sniper. Aardwolf saw everything through the hole, calmly placing his gun down. Young Master Qin has gotten the remote control. The drug traffickers are under control. Director Huang, give the order. Director Huang stilled. A second ago, he had been restless, thinking about how to mediate the crowd and minimize the damage. This second, his emotions were indescribable. How strong were the two youngsters to be able to survive in such a short period of time? Director Huang didn't waste any time, giving the order immediately. The crime squad members split into two groups, rushing into the simple room. Aardwolf, who had set up his sniper rifle, had already left the scene, as if he had never been there. In the Land Rover, the man with the code name Magician wasn't in disguise today. He was dressed in military camouflage and looked extremely handsome. Where's young master? I'm fine. Aardwolf's answer had always been concise. Magician pursed his lips. I say, can't you say something more? For example, what's the situation with young master? Do we need to follow up, or? Coyote glanced at him and interrupted, retreat. Don't even think about marrying a wife like this. Aardwolf reacted to Magician's words. He hesitated for a moment and decided to gossip. Young master is with that boy. Which boy? Fatty, who was sitting at the back of the car, straightened his back. If he didn't stick his head out, no one would be able to tell that he looked different in his military uniform. Aardwolf glanced at the crowd with his indescribable eyes. That boy. Everyone understood this sentence. Fatty's neck stiffened. It can't be. Young master has already shown off his love to such an extent that he's even bringing little Spade when he's doing business. The atmosphere in the car was too quiet. After all, none of them had expected that the first person to be single would be their boss. Wasn't that desireless man destined to become a monk? They had originally thought that even if they weren't at the starting line, they would at least be better than their boss in terms of finding a wife. What was going on? Was young master really moved? On this side, the few old men were still sighing about the impermanence of the world. On the other side, the viciousness in the tattooed man's eyes became more obvious. He was determined to get an answer so that he could take revenge in the future. However, he didn't know that he wouldn't have any chance to take revenge in the future. After the key case investigation unit came in, they handcuffed all of them. The tattooed man looked at Qin Mo. Why? You dare to arrest me but don't dare to tell me your name? Qin Mo finally glanced at him, his tone calm. Is a loser worth telling me his name? With that, the tattooed man's face contorted in anger. Bo Jiu only had one thought. Why did he have to resort to violence? In the future, she would let the Almighty do it with his mouth. At this moment, the tattooed man smirked coldly. Do you really think that you have one? You are so arrogant just because you have the remote control. Go tell your superior to release me immediately, otherwise, someone will blow this place up in half an hour. What do you mean? Director Huang frowned. The tattooed man glared at Qin Mo. If you want to know why, get this person to call me Grandpa. You. Director Huang had never seen such an arrogant criminal. The tattooed man had never been bothered by them. Even though he had been arrested, he knew deep down that as long as he had something on him, the other party wouldn't dare to do anything to him. Why aren't you calling me? Or do you think that someone will be able to remove all the bombs in half an hour? The tattooed man was handcuffed, but he didn't seem to be bothered by the people in front of him. Even within their organization, there was someone who held a high position. What could these small fries do? To put it bluntly, the Chinese were no different from pigs in his eyes. But the next second, the tattooed man's gleeful expression disappeared. It wasn't because of anything else but the silver-haired youngster's light chuckle. It's just a remote control software and you want the Almighty to call you Grandpa? As expected, losers like to dream. With that, the tattooed man turned abruptly. The youngster had already removed the remote control. She was looking at him with a dark gaze, as though the malice in her eyes was stronger than his. But even so, the tattooed man wasn't completely afraid. You found out? Heh, seems like you aren't that dumb. But so what if you found out? This activation software isn't something that can be easily deciphered. Is that so? Bojo stood up, stuffing a hand into her pocket. She glanced at him and smiled. That's a pity, I was fortunate enough to be one of the people who could decipher it. What? The tattooed man's expression changed, his eyes narrowing. His first reaction was disbelief. How was that possible? The program was created by that person. Unless he was one of the top 5 hackers in the world, it wouldn't be possible to decipher it. Huang, do you have a notebook? Bojo hesitated for a long while before deciding to call Director Huang. She didn't call him little because she wanted to save Director Huang some face since there were so many people watching. Director Huang didn't seem to feel that the youngster was saving his face. He coughed heavily, his voice rough. Are you really confident? Director Huang had his considerations. This wasn't a small matter and he couldn't make a rash decision. The new criminal psychologist had his own plans as well. The remote control is very intricate. I think we should wait for a professional to come. What about the time? Chin Mo asked calmly. This made the man look over. Since there's no time, let's do as that desperado says. Mister, you probably don't understand, but I'm an expert in psychology. People like him will really do what they say, because in his eyes, human lives are nothing. It seems like there's someone who understands the situation. The tattooed man's lips lifted in delight. That makes things easier. Chin Mo didn't even glance over, turning towards Director Huang. Notebook. Director Huang gritted his teeth. I'll send it over right away. Smith, who was dressed in a suit, was annoyed. Sir, did you hear what I said? I said, I know a little about psychology. Chin Mo interrupted him. This is China, my country. Do you think it's possible for my first criminal to come and leave so arrogantly? Mr. Smith, you probably don't know who I am, but there's a saying in China that you might be familiar with. With that, Chin Mo glanced up, his voice calm but piercing. Those who offend China will be punished no matter how far they are. Smith choked on his words and didn't say anything. The people standing around were all Huaxia natives. Who didn't have some hot-blooded manliness? How could they let him go just like that? If they didn't take a gamble, they would be letting down their clothes. At this moment, Director Huang had a backbone. No matter what Mr. Smith said, he would treat it as bullsh*t. Smith didn't know what else to say. More importantly, the other party knew who he was, but he hadn't received any information about him. Bojo swept him a glance. Once she returned to the Fifth Avenue, the first person she would harass had to be Smith. That's right, Bojo knew the expert in front of her. Smith hadn't even seen her once since they started fighting. How dare he claim to know her? What was even more unbelievable was that he had even mentioned psychology in front of the Almighty. This kid was really asking for trouble. Wasn't he going to rebuke him? Bojo chuckled lightly, taking a notebook from the crime squad. Her light laughter made the tattooed man's palms sweat uncontrollably. Ka-cha. Who knew what the youngster was thinking? She tilted her head and lit a cigarette. Just as everyone was looking over, Bojo made a new move. The metallic lighter transformed into another form when the youngster lit the cigarette. The USB port was plugged into the laptop. Isn't that a lighter? Director Huang asked curiously. Bojo passed the cigarette to him and smiled devilishly. It's a lighter, but it can be used as a USB drive when necessary. Director Huang was in disbelief. He glanced down at the thing that didn't look like a USB drive at all. The intricate patterns extended into the shape of a dragon and snake, giving off an indescribable aura. Where did this ninth young master get his hands on it? But this wasn't the time to be curious. More importantly, He had to use the remote to hack into the other party's computer and destroy the software used to control the bomb. That was the only way for everything to be safe. But could young Master Joe really do it? Director Huang had heard many ridiculous stories about the youngster in the past. One of the stories was about how the youngster had been sent to the hospital after chasing a man. Director Huang felt uneasy. No one knew what the outcome would be. Time was still moving. This meant that danger was approaching. It's useless. Do you think you can just find anyone who knows how to run a computer? The tattooed man's voice rose. Click, click, click. The rhythmic tapping of the keyboard seemed to be used to shut him up. It was extremely fast. It was so fast that the youngster couldn't even see the words on the screen. Countless chat boxes opened at the same time, as though they were working on something. The youngster continued to type while explaining, the program will leave traces of the other party's IP address. Use the surrounding computers to help me find them. Why? How? Director Huang had never seen anyone operate in such a manner, even as the director of the crime squad. The youngster lowered his lids. When his silver hair fell down, the corners of his lips curled up, revealing his canine teeth. It's simple. The speed of a computer depends on its operating memory. Take out all the memory and use it together. That way, it'll be fast. Oh, found it. Found it? Director Huang couldn't understand what had popped up, but there was indeed a chat box paused on the screen. The next second, the youngster's fingers flew across the keyboard as though she was playing Chopin. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, after images visible as she lifted her hands. She was like a diving eagle, nothing could stop her from invading and hunting. Right at this moment, the youngster paused, her beautiful brows arched. Director Huang started to panic. What is it? The other party has set up a special firewall, Bojio replied as she typed. It will take some time to crack it. The tattooed man stood at the side. He had been through a lot. He glanced at the clock hanging on the wall and laughed mockingly. Director Huang, I've told you before, the software isn't something anyone can crack. There are still 24 minutes left. If I were you, I would change your mind. There's no need to change my mind. Bojio glanced up. This level of firewall can be cracked in 2 minutes. The tattooed man's face turned green, his fists clenched tightly. Do you think you won't be discovered once you enter the firewall? Do you know who is guarding it? Your boss? Bojio chuckled, replying nonchalantly. That is indeed frightening, but I'm good at concealment. She won't be able to find me at this level. Director Huang. You don't seem the least bit afraid, Joe. The tattooed man understood that the youngster wasn't taking his words to heart. He wanted to see how long this fearless youngster could remain arrogant. Chapter 924. The atmosphere in the simple room became especially tense with the sound of the keyboard. It was like a race against time. Everyone knew that the most important thing to do in order to infiltrate the other party's computer was to finish what they wanted to do before the other party noticed. Which meant that she had to be fast. Not only did she have to be fast, but she also had to avoid the trap set up by the firewall. Director Huang watched as the youngster's fingers changed positions continuously. The screen seemed to have transformed into a regional network. The regional network was densely packed with defensive red lines, forming one checkpoint after another. All Bojio had to do was to pass through the defenses without being discovered. The youngster's silver hair fell, her eyes dark. She didn't just have to type in the code, she also had to dodge. In reality, this was an opportunity for her. A chance to lock down the other party's base. But that would expose her intrusion. Hence, Bojio didn't check the region, instead, she flew towards the hard drive. Found it, the youngster replied calmly. The tattooed man glanced up abruptly, his lips turning pale. That's impossible. Nothing is impossible. Bojio typed in a few codes to destroy the hard drive before pressing the spacebar. Director Huang watched as the other party's hard drive appeared on the screen. This was remote control, wasn't it? 1 minute. Bojo glanced at the time displayed at the side. The software required time to destroy, and once discovered, the firewall would be reactivated and it would take a lot of effort to attack. This meant that this minute was crucial. The tattooed man clenched his fists, breaking into a smile. You will definitely be discovered. Do you think it will be that easy? It seemed as though he was trying to prove his words. Suddenly, the laptop in Bojo's hand started beeping. The alarm caused everyone's heart to skip a beat. This is... Director Huang's expression changed. The tattooed man laughed heartily. Once the software is destroyed, the host computer will react and hunt down the intruder. I believe that since you know computers, you should be able to understand what I'm saying. Anyone could understand his words, even those who didn't know how to use computers. Director Huang placed his hand on the edge of the table, his brows furrowed as though he was trying to come up with a solution. Smith let out a long sigh. It seems like the god of fate isn't on our side. Director Huang, this isn't the time to be stubborn. Safety is the most important thing. If an explosion were to happen here, not only me, even you, as the person in charge of this case, would be fired. I haven't finished my game yet. What are you yelling for? She didn't even lift her head as she continued to tap on the keyboard, gesturing for them to look at the screen. The strange thing was that the destroy bar that had paused for a moment actually started working again. This is impossible. You should have been discovered. Otherwise, the alarm would not have rung earlier. The tattooed man's eyes widened. That's impossible. Bojo remained expressionless. Indeed, it was discovered, but it was the other IP addresses I set up. The firewall blocked those IPs as well. When your boss cleared those IPs, it would be enough for me to destroy the program. Didn't I tell you that I'm an expert in concealment? The tattooed man did not believe that such a technique existed. However, in the apartment on the other side of the computer. When the girl discovered that the IP address had been invaded, she sneered. Her fingers were flying, and after quickly eliminating one, she was about to teach the other party a lesson. However, he discovered that another attacking IP had appeared. The girl's eyes darkened, and she began to change her target. However, when she went over to clear it away, she discovered that it was just a remnant shadow. It was like a shadow clone in a game. He had clearly struck the other party's shadow, but when he finally reacted, he realized that he had only struck the other party's shadow. No one knew where the real person was hiding. At the end of the day, it was all because of the young man's amazing hand speed and hacking skills. The installation bar was running bit by bit, and it had already reached 90%. This number caused the tattooed man to shut his mouth. He had a strong build, but at this moment, his eyes were trembling as he thought about the possibilities. How could this be? No one should be able to break through boss's defense system. At this moment, Bojo's left hand paused. This meant that the hunt was over. Her right hand pressed the spacebar, and with a click, she lifted the corners of her lips, spitting out 2 words, K-O, buzz, buzz, buzz. This time, it wasn't Bojo's laptop that was buzzing. Instead, it was the main computer in the apartment. The girl's hand landed heavily on the black screen. Even now, she still wasn't sure what had happened to the firewall. Check, what was the other party attacking? The girl narrowed her eyes, her gaze deep and frightening. Who exactly was it, challenging her authority over and over again? The tall and slender man immediately activated the device. After less than 10 seconds, he lifted his head. The explosion program has been destroyed. Explosion program? The girl stilled, realizing the problem. She picked up her phone, dialing a string of numbers. The tattooed man's phone rang, but he wasn't in the mood to pick up the call. The countdown timer had stopped, which was a devastating blow to him. Just because he wasn't in the mood to pick up the call didn't mean it wasn't picked up. Chin Mo walked over, picked up his phone, and pressed the answer button. The girl wasn't stupid. Once she snapped back to her senses, she realized she shouldn't have made the call. She hung up immediately, removing the card from her phone. The tall and slender man watched her actions, his heart filled with unease. Something happened to the goods, it should be the crime squad. The girl tightened her grip on the phone, her voice heavy. Don't worry, I'll inform him, he will be fine. It's time to push our shield out. Look for Rao Rong, talk to him seriously, ask him if he still wants to save his father. Yes. The tall and slender man's features were sinister. Now that his expression had sunk, a menacing aura emanated from him. They better not go overboard or he would kill them all. The girl knew what he was thinking. Don't be rash, the crime squad is only so powerful because of Chin Mo. But after this, his power will be completely taken away. Without the sales point, it won't just be our profit that's affected. But we have to find out who exactly is messing with my business. The countdown timer stopped. Inside the simple room, the tattooed man glared at Bojo. Who exactly are you? A high school student. The youngster stood up, stuffing a hand into her pocket, a devilish smile on her face. You don't have to call me Grandpa, Daddy will be teaching you a lesson for free. You. The tattooed man's face contorted when he heard the term, Daddy. He wanted to retaliate but was stopped by the crime squad members behind him, pulling him into the police car. At this moment, Smith seemed to be in deep thought. Bojo paused for a moment. She thought that the other party had some information about her and would suspect her. Unexpectedly, he laughed, looking at her. You are really lucky, Z definitely isn't on the other side of the firewall. If he was there, you would have been caught long ago. But luck is also a part of victory. I wonder if you are interested in joining us and becoming one of my subordinates? Smith wasn't bad looking with his blue eyes. He looked at her affectionately since he was a fan of Oriental dolls. In his eyes, Bojo's looks were flawless. He believed that no one would reject such a good offer. Bojo stretched lazily, her voice calm. I'm not interested. With that, she reached out to grab his wrist. She lowered her head, looking at something. Needless to say, it was definitely a wound. Smith arched a brow in surprise. You probably don't know who I am or where I came from. Perhaps we can sit down and talk. Once you understand, follow me to the hospital. Before Smith could finish his sentence, Bojo dragged Chin Mo away, not even sparing him a glance. It had to be said that at certain times, Joe's charm as a boyfriend was off the charts. For example, right now. The crime squad watched as the youngster walked forward viciously. Young Master Chin was held in his hand but he didn't say a word. It's really strange these days. Director Huang found it strange as well. Was Chin Mo the passive party when they were together? Director Huang trembled at the thought. He really couldn't accept it. Bojo did things quickly, especially when she wasn't in a good mood. The reason why she rebuked the tattooed man was because of the wound on Chin Mo's hand. She had already seen it. Both of them hadn't driven over and were still wearing the cleaner's uniform. The youngster hailed a taxi. Before the driver could speak, Bojo blocked Chin Mo in a corner. Without a second thought, she scooped up the bloody finger and placed it in her mouth. Disinfect it. The driver's hand slipped, almost crashing into the railing. Even someone as indifferent as young Master Chin paused for a moment. His deep eyes looked at the silver-haired, furry fellow in front of him. It was like a small animal, a canine, licking his wound. But even if it was a canine, he couldn't be too careful. A certain someone was a fox by nature, hiding too many secrets. If he wasn't careful, he wouldn't be fawning over him. Instead, he would be thinking of a way to leave. Chin Mo felt the warmth on his fingertips. When he touched the unique softness, he couldn't help lifting his finger, touching the soft ***. Bojo stilled, the tips of her ears turning red. After all, the Almighty's actions were too. Bojo opened her mouth, avoiding the Almighty's teasing. Chin Mo remained nonchalant. Aren't you going to disinfect it? It's done. Bojo straightened before glancing to the side. The Almighty must have done it on purpose. Chin Mo pulled her back. Why do I feel like the disinfecting time isn't long enough? As he spoke, his porcelain finger touched her lips again. Just like that, it lightly brushed past her lips. It was like a feather falling, tickling her. At the start, Chin Mo didn't think much of it. But when he caught sight of the youngster's flushed neck, he couldn't help lowering his head. He turned to the side, planting a kiss on the fair skin. Then, he slowly slid down. Bojo trembled, unable to react in time. A wave of numbness washed over her. When Chin Mo kissed her, he would even consider the angle. With the board in the way and his body turned sideways, the driver in front couldn't see what was happening behind him. This was convenient for him. It was convenient for him to pull her into his arms and to bully her viciously. The neck, behind the ears, and the back were the most sensitive places for young girls when they were growing up. Chin Mo chose these places as well. His thin lips slid along her neck, sometimes touching it with the tip of his nose. No matter what, it could make one's whole body go numb as if they had lost all their strength. Her body wouldn't be able to withstand the teasing of an expert like Chin Mo at her age. Bojo's ears turned redder as his hands entered her clothes. It was so red that it looked as though blood would drip from them. Chin Mo noticed it too, but he had never imagined that there would be a day when he would enjoy looking at someone's ears so much. They had originally been like white jade, a beautiful arc, but now, they were slowly changing color. There was an indescribable allure to them. Chin Mo's eyes dimmed, his breath inching over, landing on the back of her ears. His voice was low and raspy. Come back with me tonight. Bojo shuddered again. She pushed him away and adjusted her breathing. The Almighty was using his charm, she couldn't fall for it. The warmth in Chin Mo's eyes was extinguished a little as he watched her actions. Then he heard the youngster say, "Not tonight, I have something to do later." His deep eyes turned towards Bojo, his gaze deepening. All right. Chin Mo knew better than anyone else that he couldn't force her too much. He had many ways to make a certain someone go back with him, but if she wasn't willing to do it, then it would be meaningless. But there were some things that made him even more certain. The youngster in front of him didn't seem like the young master of the Fu family or a high school student. But there was nothing wrong with the information. Where exactly was it that he hadn't thought of? Chin Mo paused. Perhaps he should go through the information on the Fu family again, especially a certain someone's daily habits. What exactly was the reason for such a drastic change in a person? He was sure it wasn't a split personality. He was a psychiatrist and he had asked about the hospital she had stayed in previously. Everything was normal. But here came the problem. Hacking skills could be self-taught, but how was it possible to react on the spot? And, why did she always want to leave him? Was there someone more important waiting for her? Chapter 925. The moment they alighted, Bojo's boyfriend Aura returned. The doctor glanced up for the third time. It's a small injury, there's no need to stay in the hospital. Just make sure it doesn't come into contact with water. The doctor wanted to tell her that it was just a cut and there wasn't a need to come to the hospital. Bojo was finally convinced, but at this moment, she paused and glanced up. He is a professionally sports player and his hand is important to him. Do you want to take a scan to check his wrist? If you insist. The doctor didn't think there was a need, but the family member had requested for a scan. But why was there such a dumb person? It was just an external injury and they wanted a scan? The doctor shook his head. Chin Mo reached out to take the pen from the doctor's hand, his voice calm. There's no need, just prescribe some medicine for external injuries. The doctor let out a long sigh. Fortunately, this person still had some sense. Bojo wasn't aware that she was being treated as an irrational person. She took the prescription while instructing the Almighty, don't eat spicy food, don't smoke. With that, she paused and reached out to take the cigarettes and phone from his pocket. I'll help you settle this. Qin Mo arched a brow at the youngster beside him. Tell me, if you don't follow me back tonight, my hand won't be able to come into contact with water. How are you going to solve the problem of bathing? The doctor and the patients around them exchanged glances. Bojo paused. I really have something to do today. Tomorrow. Qin Mo agreed without a change in expression. Change the bandages tomorrow, you can't expect me to do it myself. Almighty Qin was indeed scheming. If Magician and his gang had heard this, they would definitely have ridiculed him. Back then, when he had treated his own gunshot wound, he hadn't even used anesthetics. Now, it was just a cut on his finger. The Almighty's words made Bojo's conscience feel uneasy. After all, the Almighty had been the one who had given her the medicine when her eyes had been infected. All right. Bojo nodded, the silver whirlpool above her head turning furry the moment she got serious. Qin Mo reached out and pressed the ahog down. In less than a second, it rose up again. Qin Mo arched a brow. Bojo smiled, showing her white canine teeth. It's time for a haircut. Don't you want to grow it out? Qin Mo's tone sounded casual. Bojo paused. I won't consider it for now. Yes. That's it? Bojo couldn't see anything from the Almighty's attitude. However, there was one thing that she was very clear about. All of her actions today were basically exposing herself. Smith's arrogance prevented him from picking up any other information. But the Almighty was not Smith. Not a single detail was left out in front of him. Her victory was in the aspect of rebirth. But Bojo knew that even this link was slowly collapsing. The Almighty was too smart. So many times, he had suspected her. If one day, the Almighty was no longer rational and wanted to transfer his soul, then she would really have to face his resistance and rejection. Bojo's fingers stilled. Because of this, she couldn't bring herself to talk about her childhood. At the start, she had wanted to ask the Almighty if he had any good friends when he was young. But now, she would rather he hadn't thought about it. That way, at least some decisions wouldn't be as painful. For instance, when he had to capture her personally. Bojo smiled, stretching lazily. That was why she had to run ahead of time. She didn't want to be enemies with the Almighty. According to Qin Mo's personality, after this incident, he wouldn't give her complete freedom even if he had to return home. After he boarded the Land Rover, he instructed calmly, follow young Master Jiao and find out where she is going. Yes. Under normal circumstances, even if the bodyguards in black weren't by Qin Mo's side, they would be 300 meters away, just like the shadows of ancient times. They would appear whenever Qin Mo needed them. Drive to the police station. Qin Mo's gaze deepened. His fingers were still damp and cold. For some reason, it reminded him of the soft and smooth jade from before. His eyes darkened even further. There was no way the higher-ups wouldn't be aware of such a huge incident. But at the same time, Director Huang received a call. The content was, don't be so rash in the future. What if the remote operation doesn't stop? The public will be in danger. Smith will be in charge of the interrogation. That person let out a long sigh. Young Master Qin, please advise him. It's good to be driven, but he has to follow the procedure. Don't make a decision without a request. This will put us in a very passive position. If something really happens, who will take responsibility? Have you thought about it? Director Huang frowned, about to retort. All right, believe in Smith. He isn't any worse than Qin Mo. Director Huang tightened his grip when he heard the busy tone. Smith was preparing in the interrogation room. When he saw Qin Mo walk in, he glanced up. Mr. Qin, right? I've heard a lot about you, but you should have received the news. I will be in charge of the interrogation. You can listen in, but please don't disturb me, all right? Qin Mo stood tall, his gaze calm as he glanced over him. Instead of answering, he asked, have you fought many times with C? Of course. Smith wasn't someone who showed off his abilities, he knew how to restrain himself. I'm from the Fifth Avenue, everyone knows that's Z's home ground. It's hard not to fight with her. Is that so? Qin Mo lowered his body. Has she been to Jiang City before? Smith chuckled. Mr. Qin, have you forgotten? Z is in Jiang City right now. Qin Mo replied, I meant in the past. Of course not. Smith arched a brow. That's all you want to ask? His tone sounded as though Qin Mo was asking a stupid question. Qin Mo glanced at him. I have many questions. For example? Smith shrugged his shoulders. It was more or less as if he was implying that Smith had to ask some meaningful questions to be worthy of his answers. Qin Mo watched him, his tone unhurried. How many times have you lost to Z? Smith, if one had to use a word to describe Smith's current reaction, it would be as if someone had stabbed him in the chest with a knife. It was really painful. Even the expression on his face was rejecting such a question. Qin Mo replied nonchalantly, it doesn't seem easy to answer, but I've studied psychology before. From your reaction, I don't think you've won even once. This time, Smith froze. He cursed and wanted to argue with Qin Mo, but Qin Mo didn't say a word. Instead, he turned to Qin Mo and cursed. That person had already turned around to leave. His voice was still very indifferent and noble. With your level, it is indeed so. The interrogation must have been tiring. Bang! The door to the interrogation room was closed behind him. This was the first time Smith had the urge to kill someone. Bojo was right, wherever the Almighty was around, his venomous tongue could cause a person to collapse. In reality, there wasn't a need for weapons. But Bojo hadn't expected the Almighty to use his venomous tongue to find out about her. Fortunately, she hadn't been to Jiang City before. There was something Smith wasn't aware of. Bojo had been to China, the Golden Triangle where the three countries met. That was where she had met with the fatal ambush. Time trickled by slowly. After separating from Qin Mo, Bojo thought that since she was going to accompany He Honghua to the banquet, she couldn't wear a cleaner's uniform. I need to buy a decent suit, and I need to cut my hair. The youngster stuffed a hand into her pocket, blowing at the fringe in front of her eyes. She had wanted to get a haircut before heading to the men's clothing store on the same floor to pick a suit. Who knew that as soon as she entered the shop, she would be pointed at and shouted, F***CK. F***CK. Expert. The Almighty. My savior. Bojo glanced at the patient. It's you. The Almighty. The thorn-head youngster had probably just gotten a haircut. His haircut was hilarious. Let's put aside the grudge between number 1 and number 2 middle school. Can you do me a favor? Bojo smiled lazily. I can't, I'm in a hurry to get my hair cut. The one washing hair in this store is my little brother. The thorn-head youngster was serious. Help me play a game, I'll get him to wash your hair first. Bojo arched a brow. Why do you have so many little brothers? We're both working and studying, it isn't easy. The thorn-head youngster acted like a gangster. Bojo was helpless. Use your account to play? Is it another fight for honor? It isn't honor this time. The thorn-head youngster was a little bashful. It's a girl I like, I promised to carry her in the Hero mobile game. Bojo didn't need to ask for the outcome, there was a huge hole in front of her and she still had to carry him. I didn't expect her to be better than me. The gangster was a little incredulous when he said this. I just told her that I need to change to a place with a better network for another round. Actually, you have to set aside some time to find someone to carry you. Bojo took out the cigarette she had snatched from the Almighty and tossed it to the thorn-head youngster. Get someone to wash my hair. In the future, don't go looking for trouble with first middle school, especially the girls. In the future, if you see a girl from first middle school walking along the commercial street and being targeted by thieves, you guys from second middle school have to protect her. The thorn-head youngster replied immediately, that's the work of trash. Don't worry, I'll give them an order tomorrow. Even though the students from second middle school aren't very good in their studies, we are very protective of the fairer sex. Was that how they were supposed to be protective of the fairer sex? Bojo arched a brow and didn't say anything else. When she lay down, she took the thorn-head youngster's phone. He stood beside her, pointing at the profile picture in his friend list. This is it, isn't she pretty? Don't snatch her from me, I'm warning you. Dearest, it's just a photoshopped picture, I really can't tell if she's pretty or not. Even if she's pretty, can she be as pretty as Almighty Chin? Bojo thought to herself. Even if she liked someone, she would prefer the prettiest one. What was this? If an ordinary person heard this, they would definitely feel that there wasn't any comparison. It was a guy and a girl. But he was still a Chinibu. You don't say, young Master Chin is indeed handsome, the thorn-head youngster replied seriously. Bojo took the opportunity to enter the game, preparing to play casually. However, he had a request. You have to choose an assassin later. Aren't you best at playing as a tank? She still remembered the first time they had met. This Chinibu playstyle had always been charging forward. The gangster shook his head, you don't understand. Nowadays, the girls are obsessed with playing the assassin. I don't know who started the trend. He paused, it's you. When you were in the pro league, you always played the assassin, and you always got first clears. No, let me ask you, have you ever considered the feelings of people like us? It's not good to chase after girls. Everyone talks about your Highness Joe every day, it's depressing. Bojo, she couldn't reply. She hadn't been to school for a long time and wasn't aware of the situation. First, she adjusted the page. Since she had chosen the assassin, she changed the attributes slightly. Then she invited him in and the game began. At this moment, the shampoo youngster had already started to apply the conditioner. Hero had always been a game that allowed for better teamwork between teammates. Bojo switched on the receiver but didn't turn on the microphone. She could clearly hear a girl's voice on the other side. It was from the attacking sorcerer. Hey, Chin, why do you always drag him into such a trap? He isn't a trap. The girl named Chin was playing as a tank. Bojo looked at the team composition. It was rather reasonable. She didn't care about what the other party said and charged straight into the opponent's jungle. What did Big Spade like to do when he was playing? Of course, it was to attack the opponent's jungle, leaving them with nothing to attack. After charging over, she didn't start fighting immediately. Instead, she hid in the bushes beside the blue beast. At this moment, the attacking sorcerer spoke again. Hey, can you come back? You only know how to send yourself to death. Don't bother about him, he's from number 2 middle school. His results aren't good and his brain isn't working well, the archer spoke. He sounded arrogant. The thorn-head youngster clenched his fists tightly but didn't say a word. Bojo glanced up at him. After all, she understood this Chinibu. He was the type of person who would get angry at the slightest provocation. Yet, he didn't retort. Bojo swept her gaze over the screen once more. Her gaze landed on the girl playing as the tank. It seemed like she really liked this person. His brain isn't bad. The tank girl's voice turned cold. If you guys continue acting like this, stop playing. The archer seemed to be afraid of the girl's anger. I'm just afraid he will send himself to death. If you don't like it, I won't say it. I'll lead you guys to victory later. The tank girl didn't reply. Instead, the attacking sorcerer spoke. I knew we wouldn't lose with you around. Almighty, lead us. No problem, as long as someone doesn't send himself too far. The archer's tone was still filled with mockery. Chapter 926. Bojo swung her long sword and revealed herself. The lethality she exuded was off the charts. It was obvious that the enemy assassin hadn't expected someone to snatch the beasts at the start of the game. Caught off guard, not only did he lose the wild monster, but he was also targeted by a long sword. F***ck, it can't be. He hurried towards the sorcerer in the middle lane. It was a pity. He wasn't as fast as the youngster's precise movements. She leaped up and used her big move. In just a few minutes, Bojo had reduced the enemy's HP to a critical level. The man gritted his teeth and finally escaped to the defense tower. However, was this the end of it? He had obviously forgotten. Before he entered the tower, the young man threw a flying dagger straight at his head. Even though he had escaped into the defense tower, the damage was still there. He wanted to return to the city as soon as he took a step. A deafening sound effect appeared in the game. K.O. First HP. A magnificent first kill. However, some noobs didn't look at the map. Before the numbers appeared, the attacking sorcerer spoke. Didn't I tell you not to send yourself to death? You must be drunk to play like this. Before she could finish her sentence, the numbers on the screen changed. 1-0. Did that mean they had killed someone? The girl's voice froze. She couldn't believe it and forgot to close her mouth. That was the first kill. And they were in the enemy's territory. With the noob's abilities, it wasn't possible. Lucky. The archer's voice was heard. The sorcerer replied immediately. He probably burned some incense before he left. Heh. Bojo was still running on the map. Once the enemy discovered her tracks, they would definitely chase after her. At this moment, she had killed someone and couldn't be at full HP. She was left with half a tank of HP. Once she was controlled by the sorcerer, she would be killed instantly. But with her speed and maneuvering, an ordinary person wouldn't be able to control her. At this moment, Bojo sent a signal to gather. The signal was sent to the sorcerer in the middle lane. Usually, the assassin would lure the enemy over. As long as the sorcerer in the middle lane cooperated, the two of them would be able to kill the enemy instantly. Bojo paused in the bushes, preparing to fight back. However, there was a problem. The mage girl in the middle lane didn't hear the signal at all. She didn't even look at the map coordinates and was still clearing the troops. Bojo was an assassin. The moment she rushed forward, she couldn't retreat in time. The opposing mage unleashed a powerful spell. Bojo used the strength in her fingers to turn and avoid the fatal blow. However, at this moment, it was no longer suitable to counterattack. It was just the start of the game, and she didn't have enough money or HP. Her opponent was full HP, and the map showed that reinforcements had arrived. Bojo turned and returned to her own tower. This time, she finally understood what it meant to be tricked. He had always played in the Pro League, and his teammates would only have problems with their hand speed or technique. But this person. Bojo glanced at her sorcerer and archer. They didn't even know how to look at the map and didn't listen for signals. How did they get the confidence to fly with the Almighty? There was one more thing Bojo wanted to ask. Why was an archer shooting the blue beasts? Not fighting the red beasts, but the blue beasts? Was he trying to steal her wild? His strength was a trap for his teammates, dear. Bojo scanned the area and pondered for a moment. She decided to adjust her strategy. Chapter 927. They had to develop and strengthen their finances before they could produce equipment. That was the decision Bojo made after understanding the situation. Which meant that she wasn't going to participate in the team battle in the near future. Everyone who played the assassin class knew how lethal an assassin could be, right? No, the long-range archers and some attacking sorcerers were the main attackers. Under normal circumstances, the assassin class not only had strict control requirements, but more importantly, they had to be able to analyze the situation. They had to know when to attack, when to retreat, and when to counterattack. The strengths of an assassin were speed and explosive power. However, if one thought that an assassin should be like a tank and only charge forward without caring about anything else, then that would be a big mistake. It was obvious that the archer and sorceress in the middle lane thought that way. When the enemy rushed over, they shouted, "Hurry, gather in the middle lane, prepare for the team battle." The defense towers on both the top and bottom lane were being attacked. At this moment, they weren't going to save the towers and were going for a team battle. Bojo obviously wouldn't head over immediately. She would clear the troops around the tower and hit money everywhere she went. Her hand speed was so fast that the gangster was stunned. That was what he was thinking. Why did the same account play the same game character? How did that character become so powerful in the hands of the other party? It was unbelievable. Just as Bojo was about to attack the defense tower after the enemy on the top lane escaped with low HP, something happened in the middle lane. The sorceress came out of the defense tower. She didn't even release a stun fireball, instead, she used her big move. She was confident that she would be able to destroy the enemy with a big move. But it was obvious that she didn't just release her skill, she didn't measure the distance. That big move had indeed hit something, but it hadn't hit the opponent. This was really awkward. Such a low-level mistake in the game. Seriously, she didn't know what to say. She could only say that she couldn't escape. Sure enough, the opponent's assassin leaped over and gave the female sorceress a close-range critical strike. Together with a stun from the archer, the female sorceress was killed in less than 2 seconds. Bojo's 1v0 became a 1v1. It was a draw. The male archer ignored the tower and ran towards the city with full HP and mana. As he ran, he asked, "Where's the assassin? Don't you know about the team battle? Do you have to do this?" Bojo couldn't be bothered to say anything to those who abandoned their towers when they were full of health. She skimmed over from the wilderness and jumped into her defense tower. She cleared the troops, protected the tower, and earned money. She did everything without any delay. Then, she jumped to the right and continued to kill monsters in the wilderness. She continued to increase her finances. Seeing this, the female magician's voice was filled with anger. "Why are you still fighting monsters at a time like this? Don't you know how to team up? Do you even know how to fight?" The girl who was playing the tank couldn't help but say, "Assassins need wild monsters the most. You guys just need to defend the tower. Don't form a party first. We don't need a party in the early stages. Then he's too much of a scammer." The female magus voice was still unhappy. "If this goes on, we'll be dragged down and lose." Bojo arched a brow as she held on to the red beasts. She only had time to type one word. "Oh." It was that "oh" word that made the female magician so angry. Chapter 928. Forget it. The male archer turned on the voice chat. "He can do whatever he wants, we'll team up and attack the middle lane." The female sorcerer replied confidently, "MMH," she maneuvered her character to move forward. There were 2 opponents as well. It was the same formation, a sorcerer and an archer. The female sorcerer saw the opportunity and immediately used a big move. This time, she managed to catch someone. But the opponent's sorcerer seemed to know how to play. He released a stun fireball and with the help of the archer, he knocked the female sorcerer out on the spot. The next moment, he used a big move. KO. The female sorcerer died again. This time, the male archer didn't run because he was hit by the arrow, slowing him down. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to. Seeing that he was about to be killed to critical health. Right at this moment, a sharp blade flashed past. A small knife symbol appeared above the archer's head. The next moment, Bojo appeared like a bolt of lightning, a perfect explosive attack. In an instant, the archer's HP dropped to a critical level. At this moment, the sorcerer used another stun ball. Bojo tilted her body, dodging it perfectly. She threw a flying knife at the sorcerer before sweeping her long sword. Both the archer and sorcerer were on the verge of death. At this moment, their lives were hanging by a thread. Bojo just needed one more move and she would be able to take both lives easily. However, the male archer wasn't aware of the situation and continued to attack fiercely. Coincidentally, it was shot by him just like that. The game's music blared. Double kill. The screen showed that the 2 lives were taken by the male archer. Hence, the female sorcerer's tone became even more eccentric. Look, that's the Almighty. He should learn from some traps and just charge recklessly. It's fine, I'll be watching from the back. Even if he charges into the crowd, he'll still be able to survive. The male archer really believed that he had taken the credit for the double kill. This kid seemed to have forgotten who had saved him when he was almost killed. Why was it the other way around? Bojo glanced over at the thorn-head youngster. Where did he come from? Is that how they play? He's from number 1 middle school. The gangster clenched his fist. That's why I don't like these students from number 1 middle school. But I have to admit that he's very good at playing games. Bojo's lips twitched. You call this good at gaming? He just got a double kill, the gangster said seriously. Bojo arched a brow, her tone calm. He won't have the chance to kill again. Why? The gangster didn't understand. Bojo moved her fingers, clearing another wave of soldiers. Without me, he would have been killed. It was a fitting scene. The moment Bojo finished her sentence, news of someone being wiped out came from the middle lane. This time, it was the opponent who got the double kill. The score changed from 3-2 to 3-4. It was obvious that Bojo's team was lagging behind. Not only that, but they also destroyed one of their defense towers. Even the second defense tower was only left with half of its original structure. Fortunately, there was still the girl who played the tank. After returning to her position, she defended the half wall of the tower. The male archer was rather humble. It's my fault this time, I made a mistake. The female sorcerer immediately said, it's okay to die once, everyone makes mistakes, unlike some noob who is still fighting in the wilderness while we are in a team battle. But just as the female sorcerer said this, another sound effect played. Bojo killed someone in the wilderness, successfully tying the score to 4-4. We're really lucky to meet someone with low HP, the male archer said as he looked at the map. His tone was slightly sinister. The female sorcerer was full of disdain. It's all because you and I beat the opponent to low HP, allowing some noob to take advantage of the situation. No wonder he had to team up with us, he wanted to take advantage of us. Just as she was saying this, Bojo led the troops and jumped to the bottom of the defense tower. Successfully destroying the second defense tower on the top lane. Then, she maneuvered her character into the jungle and disappeared again. Other than hiding in the bushes, what else does this noob know? That's enough. The female sorcerer was still commenting. The male archer was still confident. Ignore him, I'm here, there's no need to be afraid. Hence, the two of them started to charge forward. This time, the opponent was alone. It was a 2v1 and the opponent didn't know how to play. The female sorcerer successfully swept the opponent and took a life. Noob, watch out, this is called a game. As she spoke, she took a step forward. A line of words appeared on the screen. Tyrant King has been killed. Killing the Tyrant King in the wilderness would double the team's finances and experience. This was beneficial to the entire team. The one who killed the Tyrant King wasn't anyone else, it was the noob that the female sorcerer was talking about, Bojo. Did Spade Z's FC King come for nothing? Whenever they wanted to clear a dungeon, they would specially choose the difficult hidden bosses. That was why they shocked Zone C time and time again. At this moment, the male archer was still speaking. It's normal for an assassin to kill a Tyrant King. If I was an assassin, would have killed the Beast King by now. Bojo replied calmly, you can give it a try and see how long you can last before being killed by the Beast King. The male archer could tell that she was being sarcastic. His anger rose. What do you mean? Are you trying to say that I'm not a good player and that I'm a noob? Under normal circumstances, no one would reply to his question since they had to be careful. But when the word "yes" appeared on the screen, the male archer wanted to curse. Hee, everyone can see who's the noob. What about you? You aren't even participating in the team battle. What right do you have to criticize others? Don't listen to him, let's go kill the Beast King. There are 4 of us now, it'll be easy. Was that really the case? They walked over. Bojo sent a message to retreat. Unfortunately, only the girl who was playing the tank hesitated for a moment. The rest of them surrounded the wild Dominator boss. The Beast King was stronger than the Tyrant in terms of attack power and HP, making it harder to attack in the early stages. But that wasn't the main point. The main point was that the other party had probably gone to the Beast King. As expected, Bojo hurriedly turned invisible and retreated. But it was too late. The female sorcerer and male archer had been eliminated in this wave of team battle. Fortunately, the Beast King hadn't been killed yet. The other party was still fighting. Everyone knew that the Beast King would belong to the one who dealt the last blow. This was what people often referred to as snatching the Beast King. Bojo hid in the bushes, calculating the Beast King's HP. At the crucial moment, a knife flew over. Chapter 929. Everyone knew what the consequences of this slash would be. The last attack was full of explosive power. It directly stole the Dominator boss that the other side had worked so hard to defeat and successfully captured the Wyvern. Damn, is the assassin on the other side using a cheat code? How can you snatch it like this? I've already been killed by him twice. I feel so wronged. Don't be so long-winded. Kill him first. There were 5 Dominator bosses, but none of them had full HP. But there were tanks, long-range shooters, and team control sorcerers, all of them surging towards her. Bojo glanced at the map on her phone but didn't turn back. The reason was simple. There were 2 people on the way back. One was a tank, and the other was a mage. Going back was basically suicide. He moved sideways towards the opponent's wilderness, making use of the bushes and walls in the wilderness to perfectly avoid the long-range cannons fired by the archer. This kid is too bold. Stop him, we must stop this assassin. However, Bojo wasn't going to let them catch her so easily. When she escaped, she didn't forget to throw a flying dagger at them. 2 people were sent flying in a row, and both of them were slowed down by her. He was about to escape. The young man raised his hand, and the towel he was using to dry his hair accidentally covered the young man's eyes. Bojo's first reaction was that it was over. As expected, the resurrected teammates didn't give her any support. They were separated by a wall. One of them was low on HP, while the other was half HP. Both of them had used their ultimate moves on her. In other words, if their archers and mages attacked together, their opponents would be helpless. But no one cooperated. No one even tried to save her. When Bojo sat up, the character on her phone had already revived in the city center. The female mage was still unhappy. Everyone's back. Why did you rush in alone? You'll be surrounded. Li Shui, he stole the Dominator boss. Did you only see him being surrounded? Did you not see him steal the boss? The tank girl was really angry this time. You're the one who used your skills the wrong way, not him. The sorceress paused for a moment, then said in an indifferent tone, So, Qing, you still think I'm wrong? Then let him fight on his own. Let's see how many times he'll be surrounded and killed. What the sorceress didn't expect was that when she said those words, Kiran's voice suddenly rang out. Bojo really went alone. At the very least, there were wyverns at the front and troops at the back. It was equivalent to having a tank to help her resist the tower. The defense tower at the bottom lane had been turned into an empty shell by Bojo. The male archer was still in the middle lane. You don't want to join us and still insist on taking the wrong path. I know, the female magus snorted coldly. Looking at the map, the 5 people on the opposite side were all heading towards the pit. He added, "They're basically looking for death, alright?" "No, something's wrong." Instead, someone from the opposing side reacted. It was because he usually watched the pro scene, but now he only paid attention to one thing. That was, the income of this assassin was more than double of theirs. In other words, with the same game character, the opponent's attack power would be much higher than theirs. "Don't go." Before he could finish his sentence, the game's music blared. "K.O., 1 kill. Look, he's dead." The female magus shrugged. "And you still say you're not a scammer?" But as soon as she finished speaking, her expression changed. That was because the second announcement sounded in the game. "Double kill." Double kill? What did that mean? The person who had died wasn't the pit, but the opponent? That wasn't all, the pit had killed 2 of their players in one go, even when he was surrounded by 5 people. The male archer was calm. "It's just a double kill, he won't be able to escape anymore." But his luck isn't too bad. The male archer wanted to give the female magus and himself a way out, attributing everything to luck. But Bojo wasn't going to give them the chance to argue. She retreated, hiding behind the bushes. The opponent was still shouting, F***ck, he actually dodged it again. "Where's the tank? It can enlarge, squat him." The one who said this was the only DPS on the other side. He didn't know that the moment he finished speaking, the assassin who had been running to the right shook. After changing his body shape, he stuck close to Bojo and swept her across. All of a sudden, the third in-game sound effect rang out. 3 kill. But that wasn't the end. Bojo tilted her body, the flying knife piercing through, reducing the speed. The opponent's assassin couldn't even walk, much less escape. With a swoosh, the sword landed. 4 kill. This time, the sound effect was different. Be it the other party or the hairdresser, both of them were dumbfounded. The Thornhead youngster's jaw dropped. That works too. MMH, Bojo replied, her fingers twirling. The Thornhead youngster reminded her, "Aren't you leaving?" "He's in critical condition." The opponent was a tank, he couldn't move. "I won't leave with a dragon." Bojo's phone switched back and forth, she seemed to be changing equipment. The image that flashed by made the Thornhead youngster dizzy. The Thornhead youngster rubbed his temples. "Why are you still fighting when he's in critical condition?" "He's a tank. He doesn't have any big moves left," Bojo replied faintly. The Thornhead youngster was confused. Seriously? How could she remember that? How could she let him have a good time? "Sometimes, you won't die if you don't escape," Bojo said, charging forward with her sword. She swept across, catching the opponent off guard. The tank didn't have time to react and was already in critical condition. At first, he thought it was over. After all, the city center was behind him. As long as he returned to the city, he would be back to full HP. Unexpectedly, at the moment when he walked back to the city, a flying knife directly stabbed at him. K.O. 5 consecutive kills. The Thornhead youngster took a deep breath when he saw this. The female sorcerer and male archer froze on the spot. After all, everyone could hear the sound effect in the game. It was a 1v5 and he was surrounded on the high ground, but he still managed to kill 5 consecutive kills. This time, they couldn't say anything about the opponent relying on luck. The atmosphere was awkward. Everything in front of them, including the tall figure standing in the middle of the screen and the shattered city, was a harsh slap to their faces. They won the match. They didn't just win. Everyone felt as though they had been put on a show by the assassin in black. Especially the last 5 consecutive kills on the high ground. The opponent couldn't help but ask Bojo to be his disciple. Bojo didn't agree, returning the phone to its original owner. She looked at herself in the mirror, deep in thought. It wasn't an easy match. There were even a few times when she had to escape to save her life. She wasn't like this when she was in a professional match, because no matter where she appeared, the team would rush to support her. She didn't need to escape, she just needed to cut in quickly and accurately. It was especially so when she was in a team with the Almighty. Bojo thought about it. She roughly understood what Fengyi meant when he said, "You still need to train more." When playing hero, one person could indeed carry the entire field, but really sports wasn't a single-player game. It was to be like the Almighty, who could carry the entire field when he was alone and could coordinate well in a team battle. It seemed like before the National League. It was time to change what she lacked the most. On the other side, the silver-haired youngster stood up with a smile. On the other side, the thorn-head youngster pondered for a moment before opening the WeChat discussion group. With a flushed face, he said, "I'm sorry, I wasn't the one who played the previous round. I'm not good as an assassin, but I can play as a tank. Even if it's a pit, I can block in front of you and give you time to escape. What I mean is, are you still willing to play with me?" In reality, if the thorn-head youngster hadn't said it, no one would have known he had found someone else to play for him. After all, everyone was still immersed in the shocking quintuple kill just now. But to the thorn-head youngster, he didn't have a single good point. He wasn't good at his studies, and even though he looked good, he wasn't smart. He liked to be the boss, and even in games, he couldn't beat the boss of number 1 middle school. The latter was a huge blow to him. You guys wouldn't understand the hatred between number 2 middle school and number 1 middle school. Who was better? It was a matter of pride. In comparison, he wasn't as good-looking as the youngster. After all, pretty boys were trending nowadays. A tough guy like him wasn't cute. But he knew there was something he had to follow. Things should be as they were. He wanted to act cool. Hence, when he saw the youngster, he wanted to win. But at that time, he had thought it through. If he won, he would tell the youngster the truth. Even if he was a bastard, he wouldn't lie to the girl he liked. That was also the reason why Bojo felt this Chinibu was worth befriending. The WeChat discussion group went silent for a second. The next second, the sorcerer girl, Li Shue's voice popped out. "I knew it. How can a pit like you play so well? Playing games requires intelligence. Li Shue, don't make things difficult for the students from number 2 middle school. It's not easy to find someone to play for him." It was obvious that the person who said this was the male archer. The thorn-head youngster clenched his fists. Bojo glanced over. "This is the second time you have to control your temper." "I can't help it, they are friends." When the thorn-head youngster lowered his head, he looked like a large dog. "Otherwise, with my temper, do you think I wouldn't beat them up? Hee, it's an insult to my reputation as the boss of number 2 middle school." Bojo arched a brow but didn't reply. Just then, a voice came from the other side. "Where are you now?" "Outside." The thorn-head youngster's voice was still muffled. "Come to my house." The girl's voice was cold, but the words she said were warm. "Who wants you to be good at games? Hurry up and study with me. You don't want to go to university anymore, do you?" The thorn-head youngster's eyes lit up. "I'm going over now." The girl was obviously trying to get back at the thorn-head youngster. Some people are indeed smart, but remember, I like people like you who are a little dumb and a little pit. MMH. The thorn-head youngster nodded continuously. Bojo seemed to be able to see a certain Chinibu's ears pricking up. Seriously? Did his lackeys from number 2 middle school know about him? But, from your tone, you two seem to know each other. We live in the same district, but we weren't familiar with each other in the past. We only got to know each other after a while. With that, the thorn-head youngster turned and patted Bojo's shoulder. "I heard that you like young Master Qin to the point of insanity. But you still haven't moved his heart, right?" "Bojo. Who did you hear that from? Is that how you use the adjective crazy? To be honest, I used to despise people like you. What's that called again?" "Oh right, gay." The thorn-head youngster frowned. "But you are different, you aren't a sissy at all. As the boss of No. 2 middle school, I shouldn't be talking to you about this since destroying you has always been our school's plan. But this time, it's different. I feel that there's something wrong with number 1 middle school recently. Don't always chase after your almighty and forget your mission as the boss of number 1 middle school. Bojo. What did he mean by mission as the boss of number 1 middle school? This was a conversation between a Chinibu. What problem? Bojo asked casually. The thorn-head youngster caressed his chin. Someone wants to buy the trending searches. It's the girl who played with us just now. Buy the trending searches? Bojo frowned. Why would a high school student want to buy the trending searches? The thorn-head youngster shrugged. I don't know the details, but I know who her target is. It's a web novelist who seems to be depressed. Bojo glanced up. Why are you telling me this? Aren't you any sports idol? The thorn-head youngster pouted. An idol has to display his strength and let the people who like you learn from him. Someone should believe your words. My girlfriend likes that web novelist quite a bit. Bojo arched a brow. Your girlfriend? The girl who played with Tank just now. Isn't she pretty? The thorn-head youngster asked shyly. Bojo replied lazily, she just asked you to go home for tuition. How did she become your girlfriend? Didn't you hear her say she likes me? The thorn-head youngster shook his head. Forget it. Someone like you who doesn't get confessed to often wouldn't understand. Bojo, honestly, this isn't the only problem in number 1 middle school. As the top student in the school, you probably don't realize it. Anyway, it's quite troublesome. The thorn-head youngster revealed another piece of information. Previously, I saw someone from number 1 middle school with the local tyrant. He seems to be a mistress and is helping the other party to do something. The local tyrant seems to be doing a big business recently. In short, it's very profitable. But the dangerous thing is, when I went to socialize with my old man, I heard him say that as long as he took down the school, he would earn more than that. Speaking of which, aren't the students from number 1 middle school all dumb geese who only know how to study? Why is it more chaotic than number 2 middle school? It didn't seem to be important, but it revealed a lot of information. Bojo memorized everything without batting an eyelid. She stuffed her hands into her pockets and glanced at the clock hanging on the wall. I have something on, I have to go. All right, the thorn-head youngster replied. When I go to socialize again, I'll help you look after the students from number 1 middle school. I don't want you to die before I can even fight with you, benefactor. After Bojo left, someone in the WeChat group asked, who was the assassin just now? I recorded it and posted it online. Someone said that the assassin was so cool, can you tell me who it was? The thorn-head youngster thought for a moment before typing an ID. Spade Z. In an instant, the WeChat group exploded. Spade Z? Oh my god. It's actually My Highness Joe. Is he still there? Is he still there? I want to confess. No wonder he got the first kill in the first match, it's indeed my big spade style. He even stole the dragon, he's so shameless, so cool. He must be really depressed. That's why when Big Spade is around, don't fight the dragon, it'll ruin your life. Li Shui just said that Big Spade is a scammer. Li Shui, who was called out, paused for a moment, then said, it's just a game. Of course, professional players play better than us normal players. To be honest, I don't know all of these esports players, but I don't really like them. It's not that I'm being biased, but I just feel that these people are leading the students astray. Instead of studying, they're always playing games. It's not good to be addicted to games. The thorn-head youngster didn't get angry at all. After hearing her words, he turned on the voice chat. Student Li Shui, think about it before you speak. Who is the number 1 in number 1 middle school? It's the person who doesn't study properly. Spade Z is an esports player, but in your words, he's addicted to games. How dare you say he's not biased? If you think games aren't good, you don't have to play because it only shows the bad side. On the other hand, there are people who work hard and never give up. Even if they score 0, they can still shine in the esports arena. If you don't understand this logic, shut up. Qing, this is the person you said you like? That's enough, how can you be so rude? Li Shui sneered. Qing also turned on the voice chat, her tone unhurried. If speaking the truth is rude, then we can't do anything about it. Li Shui paused, she didn't expect the other party to put her in such a difficult position. She threw down a sentence. You really learn from the people you interact with. Then she went offline. She had more important things to do, there was no need to argue with them. Just like that, the entire incident seemed to have calmed down, but in fact, the darkness was just starting to descend. It was written in a book that the human heart was scarier than ghosts. And no one could predict the human heart. Time trickled by. At the largest garden-style hotel in Jiang City, there was a gathering for businesswomen. For such an annual gathering, the guests were all successful and reputable women in Rivertown. They weren't just rich, they had to be classy. Hence, as long as one was from Rivertown, he or she would want to attend such a gathering. The place was filled with fresh flowers, all wooden decorations. There was a piano in the middle, a champagne tower placed high, and on the wooden table covered with a white tablecloth, besides candles, there were all sorts of fruits. Not far away, there was a chef making pastries and some barbecued meat. This meant that people could order whatever they wanted to eat on the spot. In the past, He Honghua didn't have the right to attend this gathering. It wasn't because she wasn't rich enough, but because the other party invited Su Mei. This time, He Honghua attended because she was clear that she had to do something at the right time. Her Jiu was already a professionally sports player. She was bound to become more and more popular in the future, to the point that almost all the students were talking about her. Because of this, she couldn't step back. She didn't want people to say, look, that's her. Her mother came from the countryside, and she's a shrew who can't even write. When people talked about Jiu, they would say, look at that person. Humans were just that weird. In the past, He Honghua never cared about what others said about her. But once her child was involved, everything changed. It didn't matter what her family background was. But she didn't want such things to become a burden to her Jiu. He Honghua had always been a carefree person. This time, she put on makeup for the first time. She even went to find a stylist just to look presentable. She had dressed up in the past, but no matter how she dressed up, she couldn't shake off the title of shrew in such a place. He Honghua was still hesitating, wondering if she should go in. A tall and slender figure walked over from her left, reaching out to place a hand on her shoulder. The youngster had a clean and faint smile. Mom, why aren't you going in? Why are you standing here? Bo Jiu was dressed in a well-ironed white suit with a bow on her collar. Her lips were lifted, her bright eyes and white teeth making her look like a prince. There weren't many people who could resist a suit of this color, but Bo Jiu seemed to be born with a demonic aura. Even though it was white, she could still exude a devilish aura. It was very attractive. Even He Honghua felt that her Jiu was so handsome that it made her blush. Her round face broke into a smile, filled with delight. Bo Jiu arched a brow, bending her arm into an arc. Let's go, Madam He, enter. He Honghua had never been invited like this before. She paused for a moment, then clumsily moved her arm forward. Madam He, be more confident. Trust me, your Jiu is so handsome, it will definitely give you extra points. Bo Jiu's face didn't blush when she said this, her heart wasn't racing. Instead, there was a smile on her beautiful face. She was really narcissistic. But because of this sentence, He Honghua's heart wasn't as chaotic and uneasy as when she had first arrived. Yes, be more confident. She was here to eat. Bo Jiu glanced over as she walked, observing He Honghua's side profile. When she saw the smile, her lips lifted. He Honghua still had to ask, what did you do today? I didn't see you at the club, your teammates said you weren't training today. Bojo wasn't going to tell He Honghua about defusing the bomb. She reached out and tugged her suit, smiling devilishly. I went to buy this and even got a haircut. I'm going to accompany Madame He to the banquet. How can I not bring my own equipment to carry the crowd? He Honghua laughed. You child. The moment they entered, they caught everyone's attention. Chapter 930. The male archer from before was also at the banquet. Compared to Bojo's suit, he was dressed with more thought. He was wearing a British tuxedo that was tailored well, making him look tall and straight. The male archer wasn't anyone else. He was the celebrity son that Guo Rong had mocked when she heard that He Honghua was attending the banquet, Yi Sihua. When he found out that movie Queenan was coming, he felt that his chance had arrived. They were in the same industry after all, hence, he had received some news. Recently, movie Queenan had secured a huge role overseas and the director was internationally renowned. He was currently searching for a mysterious Asian youngster. If he received movie Queen Anne's recommendation, he would be able to act in the film. Wouldn't his net worth be that of a C-list celebrity? Those that weren't in the industry probably wouldn't know. As long as he acted in a huge film overseas, he would receive a steady stream of domestic resources. Other than that, he would be classified as an actor. Hence, to Yi Sihua, today was truly a ladder for him to climb up. As for his acting skills, who cared? This was an era where looks mattered. As long as his acting skills were good, there wouldn't be a problem. There were people in the industry who wanted him to study. What a joke, he had to squeeze time for his classes because he was worried that the paparazzi would say that his acting had affected his studies. He had to be a role model so he didn't have the time to study. Anyway, he could just use a stunt double for some scenes. As long as he had connections, he wouldn't have to worry about not being popular. Right now was the best time for him to grab hold of this opportunity. In terms of looks, he was confident that no one could beat him. But Yi Sihua tightened his grip on his wine glass when his gaze was stolen. The people that had been chatting with him paused, their gazes landing on the person who had stolen his limelight today. Yi Sihua was still in the group chat, obviously aware that the person who had stolen his limelight was Spadesy. But they didn't know that he was the shooter. Regardless of whether he was playing or interacting with others, he would never reveal his real identity. At most, he would say that he was from number 1 middle school. After all, he was a celebrity. But he had never experienced such a feeling. It was fine that he had been outshone in the game. What right did this upstart from the countryside have to come here and steal his limelight? Guo Rong didn't like He Honghua and the others either. In fact, this was not surprising. Some of the ladies who often socialized knew that Guo Rong and Su Mei were very close. Back then, she had looked down on He Honghua and even said that Guo Rong could not understand why that plain and fat country girl was so persistent. Could it be that Guo Rong could not see what she and Su Mei had sensed before? If she knew what was good for her, she would quickly give up. She had no self-awareness at all. Hence, when Bojo and He Honghua started walking, her first reaction was to pout. However, people like them would never show their true thoughts on their faces. This was the elegance they flaunted. This was also the reason why Guo Rong felt that she was superior to others. She looked down on people like He Honghua who came from the countryside and wanted to join them no matter what their status was. Not to mention that son of hers. Not only was she a love-struck fool, she even dared to attack his own father. Guo Rong had also heard Su Mei talk about this person. Other than being a professionally sports player, there was nothing good about him. But even though esports sounded nicer, it was just a game. He was really a person at the bottom of the social hierarchy, trying to find an opportunity to bite others. Guo Rong retracted her gaze from the two of them, holding onto her wine glass with a smile. She couldn't even be bothered to look at them. Come, Sihua, follow your Aunt Yang Huan more, it will be easier for her to introduce you later. I remember that you have interacted with movie Queenan before, right? Guo Rong was obviously trying to raise her son's social status. Yi Sihua had indeed met movie Queenan, but he had been seated below the stage, watching the goddess of the film and television industry receive her award. But that didn't stop him from using this incident to create hype. We met when we were overseas. Oh. As the organizer of the banquet, Yang Huan arched a brow and smiled. Sihua, you are quite impressive. Sihua replied humbly, it's nothing much, it was just a chance to attend an event and learn from a senior. You're doing quite well now. A lot of people are asking me how I met you when they saw our photo. You'll definitely become famous in the future. Yang Huan smiled and said, don't forget to support your Auntie Yang. Sihua was confident. I definitely won't forget. But even so, he didn't manage to attract the attention he wanted. Because the ladies beside him weren't talking about him, but the nouveau riche who wasn't even fit to carry his shoes. That's him, right? Spade Z. I don't know why my daughter likes him so much. My daughter isn't interested in anything other than solving questions. This time, she actually said she wanted to surpass the school hunk in her school to be a qualified fan. What do you think she's talking about? My son is even more interesting. He recently cut his hair and said he wanted to join the military. He said he couldn't even beat a gigolo in his life, it was too humiliating. Now that he joined the military, it fulfilled our wishes. In the past, he always thought he was the best in the world and was extremely arrogant. But to be able to beat my son down, he is indeed impressive. It's good to have such a child. He seems rather sensible, unlike what Su Mei said in the past. There were plenty of whispers in the banquet. But Sihua wanted to share all the whispers with him. Both mother and son had the same thought. Guo Rong didn't feel comfortable either. After all, in all the events she had attended, as long as her son was around, others would always be envious of her. Today's banquet wasn't going according to her expectations. Guo Rong narrowed her eyes. As the invited party, she had to greet the host. It was basic etiquette. Hence, the moment Bo Jiu entered, she brought He Honghua towards Yang Huan. If it had been He Honghua herself, she wouldn't have been confident. But with Bo Jiu around, things were different. He Honghua greeted Yang Huan naturally. To Yang Huan, maintaining harmony in social settings was basic etiquette. Even if He Honghua wasn't invited, it didn't make a difference to her. She knew how to make polite small talk. In the past, Guo Rong could have done the same. But now, she couldn't do it. She wasn't someone who deserved to attend such banquets. How could she bring up the tempo? Boss it's been a while. Guo Rong smiled and said, your son is becoming more and more outstanding. I think our situation is quite similar. We only have one son in our family. However, Sihua has always been sensible and humble. He has never caused any trouble outside. Even though he is famous now, he has not become arrogant. As for your son. She paused, frowning before continuing, the negative news hasn't stopped. Actually, as parents, we have to consider everything for our child. It's good to be famous, but if he isn't, he would be rash and easily get into trouble. It's better for our family to keep an eye on him. It's more important for him to cultivate both internally and externally. I remember your son wasn't used to such occasions. How is he now? He should have learned how to drink red wine, right? Of course, she still remembered Guo Rong. But she didn't have a deep impression of her son. The reason Guo Rong mentioned how to drink red wine was to mock the first time she had attended a gathering with Su Mei. When others had clinked glasses with her, she had gulped down large mouthfuls. She hadn't been aware of this aspect. At that time, the original body had treated Su Mei as a good person. She hadn't known that Su Mei had brought her out just to embarrass her in public. And Guo Rong had been one of the participants. He Honghua understood what Guo Rong was implying. Her gaze dimmed. She told herself not to be rash. If she was rash, she would fall into the other party's trap. It was better to tolerate it. If she lost her temper, it wouldn't be worth it for her Jiu to be criticized for her lack of upbringing. According to Bo Jiu's personality, such words would go in one ear and out the other. She would just ignore it. But today, He Honghua was here. In this world, there would always be such a person. You couldn't allow her to suffer. To Bojo, Hihonghua was such an existence. I've been doing some research on red wine recently. Bojo stuffed a hand into her pants, a devilish smile on her face. Thank you for your concern, Boss Gua. In Guorong's memory, the youngster was still a weak and useless nouveau riche. Now that she heard the youngster's words, she stilled for a moment before breaking into a smile. It's good that you know. I would like to get Sihua to teach you. Both of you are around the same age. Even though there are differences in some aspects, it should be easier for you to communicate. Of course, other than gaming, you don't do anything else. Unlike our Sihua, he has to study every day besides reading scripts. Bojo lifted her lips. Boss Gua, why do you think I don't do anything else? Aren't you esports players just gaming? There wasn't anything wrong with Guorong's words and actions, but everyone could hear the disdain in them. Bojo looked at her, her voice calm. I think Boss Gua has some misunderstandings about our profession. We don't just play games. A professional esports player has to be online for at least 8 hours a day. 4 of those hours are for basic training, reflexes, hand speed, positioning, as well as the coordination between the team members. They have to be practiced repeatedly. Also, Boss Gua, I believe that respecting people from all walks of life is the foundation of being a boss. What do you think, Boss Gua? Guorong was at a loss for words. She had never expected this little country bumpkin to become someone she couldn't fight back against. She had led her into the gutter without a word. There were many people present and they had started their careers in various industries. Of course, she knew what mistake she had made. Yang Huan didn't want anything unpleasant to happen during the banquet since Mizan was coming later. So, when she saw any signs of trouble, she immediately said, "Kids these days are more thoughtful than we were back then." Director Gua doesn't mean that. Come, let's have a toast. Let's keep our words in the wine. Yang Huan wasn't being fair, but regardless, Guorong was someone she interacted with regularly. Hihonghua was an outsider after all. Inviting her to the banquet was just to make up the numbers. Between the two, she would definitely lean towards Guorong. I felt like something was missing since just now. Yang Huan glanced towards Sihua. I haven't chosen the music yet. Sihua, why don't you play a song for us? Actually, the way they treated each other was equivalent to leaving Hihonghua and Bojo in the cold. Bojo had never attended such events with Hihonghua before. But when she saw that Hihonghua was used to it, the warmth in her eyes dissipated. How many times had she been ostracized for it to become a habit? She knew how much effort Hihonghua had put into this banquet. Perhaps, she didn't care. But even if she didn't care, she shouldn't be in such a state. It didn't matter if she didn't attend such a banquet. Bojo was about to speak when a familiar voice came from beside her. A familiar voice came from beside him. Auntie Yang suggested it, so it should be possible. But I heard young Master Fu's words just now, and it seems to be very impressive. Why don't I play a part for young Master Fu? I don't need to play any famous songs, just basic piano basics. Young Master Fu should know, right? Bojo glanced up towards Sihua, arching a brow. Was this the male archer from earlier? Sihua wasn't aware that she was good at disguising herself and was extremely sensitive to voices. Moreover, Sihua's tone was filled with disdain. Naturally, she could tell who he was. Or do you mean that young Master Fu doesn't even know the basics? Sihua continued, clearly not giving her a way out. Even though he hadn't interacted with this useless person, he knew a little about him. He didn't even know how to touch a piano, much less play it. How dare he be so arrogant in the game and steal his limelight? He was going to let him have a taste of the consequences in real life. Even though they had a piano at home, Hihonghua had never heard her Jiu play it before. She had always assumed it was just a decoration. After all, her Jiu liked to show off. Sihua was doing it on purpose to embarrass her Jiu. He Honghua clenched her fists, wanting to say something. Bo Jiu was faster than her. Should I play first or you? He Honghua paused, glancing up instinctively, her eyes filled with worry. Yi Sihua chuckled. You can go first. I'm afraid you won't have the mood to play after I start since I'm a professional. The mockery in his words was obvious. He was clearly trying to belittle her. Oh. So you're a professional? Bo Jiu walked forward casually, standing tall beside the piano. She glanced up, her gaze devilish. If an amateur like me doesn't play well, things will get awkward. Yi Sihua smirked. Let's talk about that after you finish playing. This useless person was really shameless, playing better than him. Did he know where he came from? Bo Jiu remained nonchalant in the face of his mockery. Everyone watched as the silver-haired youngster in a suit sat at the brightest spot. Chapter 931. There was a sudden gasp from the crowd. Both Bo Jiu and the mocking Yi Sihua turned towards the source of the sound. A woman walked in from the door. She seemed to be the beloved child of God. Whether it was her face or temperament, she was perfect. Few people could wear this kind of oriental red color with a noble effect, but when it was on her, it was as if nothing was a problem. That kind of fiery red color set off her snow-white skin, only making people feel that there was a kind of indescribable lazy beauty. That was not all, because there was another person standing beside her. He was dressed in a black suit, but it gave him the aura of a young master of a warlord. His arms were half bent, and his slender legs were walking forward. His tall nose bridge and thin lips were just perfect, sexy and noble at the same time. Who else could it be other than the ravishing young Master Qin of Jiang City? The woman in his arms was Movie Queenan, whom Yang Huan had been looking forward to meeting for a long time. In reality, not many people knew that Movie Queenan and Qin Mo were mother and son. Mainly because no one knew about Movie Queen Anne's background other than acting. Her appearance this time. Many were shocked. In terms of age, the two of them didn't seem to be a match. Besides, for young Master Qin to accompany her and intentionally lower her status, she must be a relative of the Qin family. Could Movie Queen Anne be one of young Master Qin's cousins? The wrong guess was because Movie Queen Anne didn't look like someone in her 40s. Other than Yang Huan, Bo Jiu was the only one who knew the truth. But Bo Jiu was surprised that the almighty and Movie Queen would attend the banquet. Based on their personalities, they shouldn't have attended such events. That was indeed the case. Movie Queen Anne's motive for attending the banquet was to make friends with her in-laws. She hadn't expected to meet her son at the entrance. Hence, she had dragged him in. Movie Queen Anne had wanted to introduce her son to Madame He, but the moment she entered, she saw the silver-haired youngster smiling faintly at her from beside the piano. Jiu was here too. In that moment, Movie Queen Anne's eyes lit up. That was the benefit of being beautiful, even her eyes were deep and seductive. Yang Huan also saw Movie Queen Anne's gaze on her. But she assumed that Movie Queen Anne was looking at Yi Sihua, so she walked over with a smile. Sister Anne, you came at the right time. Sihua was just about to play the piano. Guorong followed behind Yang Huan. Looking at the beautiful woman in front of her whose age could not be guessed, her mind raced. She didn't know how powerful this person with the surname Anne was. In her eyes, the other party was just a celebrity who was good at acting. Later, she heard from her son that her identity would be of great help to him. Only then did she change her opinion of this woman. It was a waste to use such an important time to trample on He Honghua and her son. In any case, a country bumpkin would only be a country bumpkin. It was not worth it for them to take it seriously. Therefore, Guorong quickly continued Yang Huan's words. Madam Anne, Sihua told me that you've met once. What he said the most was for me to learn from your elegance as a mother. Now that I've seen you today, I'm still far from it. Movie Queen Anne didn't say anything in response. With her self-restraint, she wouldn't expose a person. But at the same time, she smiled ambiguously and didn't reply. This was to deter those who wanted to get close to her. It was a pity that whenever Guorong tried to get close to someone with a motive, she would always ignore the fact that the other party didn't want to talk to her. She smiled and continued, I will get Sihua to prepare now. Madam An is here, I want to play something nice. With that, Guorong walked towards the piano. Unbeknownst to her. At this moment, Qin Mo was making eye contact with a certain someone. The gist of it was for her to go over to his side. This time, Bojiu understood the Almighty's intentions. She supported her chin with her left hand, her fingertips tapping the piano keys. She still had to play. Qin Mo arched a brow, his gaze sweeping over Yi Sihua, who was standing beside her. His eyes dimmed as though he was asking, who is this? Don't tell me he's the person you confessed to before. Bojiu understood his gaze. Almighty, don't bring up my dark history. Besides, how could I confess to someone like him? It was an insult to her taste. He Honghua noticed her Jiu's gaze, but she wasn't sure if she should greet Qin Mo in such an occasion. Yes, in He Honghua's eyes, Qin Mo was just a junior who often visited her house. But from the looks of it, Qin Mo had been much easier to interact with when he was at her house. Now that they were in public, his aura changed. It was an air of nobility that kept strangers away. He Honghua wasn't the type to announce their relationship to the world. Hence, she didn't move. She was still thinking about her Jiu's piano competition with someone. Bojiu had the same thought. After the interruption, she tidied herself up and was about to start. But, Madam look, Madam An is here. Let's stop this meaningless piano competition for now. Your son should sit somewhere else. Guorong smiled politely since she had to be elegant. He Honghua frowned. What was the meaning of this? They were the ones who wanted her Jiu to play the piano. Were they trying to chase her away? Bojiu smiled. She didn't move, her posture relaxed and suave. Boss Gua doesn't have the final say. We still have to compete. Hee hee. Guorong chuckled lightly, like an elder guiding a junior. Young Master Fu, don't be so serious now. If you really want to compete, I'll get Sihua to teach you another day. Bojiu didn't move. Instead, she glanced up, her gaze as dark as the night sky, sending chills down her spine. Guorong was stunned by the young man's gaze. Yang Huan hurried over. Madam it's going to be a private gathering and the piano is going to be used. I'm sorry, why don't you get your son to leave first? Yang Huan was the organizer, and since the organizer had said so, it would seem shameless if she continued to sit there. However, this group of people was too much of a bully. They were the ones who had coaxed her Jiu to play the piano. Now, weren't they just playing with her? He Honghua clenched her fists, her face flushing red. Yi Sihua was already standing beside the piano. His arrogant attitude was obvious, he was asking the youngster to give way. But he hadn't expected this. The slender figure walked over and stood in front of him. He stuffed one hand into his trouser pocket, the other on the piano. He was elegant, handsome, and elegant. People like him couldn't compete. Yi Sihua was confident in his looks, but as long as he was around, celebrities like him had to step aside. He had filmed a role in the past, a young master of the warlord era. He was from number 1 middle school after all. The forum would definitely be flooded with his photo. But very quickly, someone posted a photo of Qin Mo. What's the big deal? I'll show you the young master of the warlord in real life. When Qin Mo had first entered the school, he had been wearing a military uniform and undergoing military training. His upright posture hadn't captured his face, but the image of him holding a bottle of mineral water and wearing military boots had instantly caused the posts related to him to sink. At that time, he had been thankful that Qin Mo wasn't in the entertainment industry. Now that he was facing Qin Mo, Yi Sihua didn't have any temper. Because he knew very well that there was too much of a gap between them. What confused Yi Sihua the most was movie Queen Anne's words. Jiu, you know how to play the piano? Yi Sihua wasn't the only one whose expression changed. Even Guo Rong turned towards Movie Queen and Joe. Movie Queen and actually called this country bumpkin Joe? Did they know each other? How was that possible? He Honghua was the son of a country bumpkin, how could he know such a noble person? But the scene before them forced them to believe it. Movie Queen was behaving like a fangirl, her eyes sparkling. Hurry up and play a song, I've always wanted to see you sitting in front of the piano. It's just as I imagined, it's perfect. Yang Huan and Movie Queen could be considered friends, but even if it was her, Mizan wouldn't speak to her in such a tone. What exactly was the relationship between He Honghua's son and Sister An? No, what had he done to gain Sister An's affection? Bo Jiao had interacted with Movie Queen a few times and knew that the Almighty's mother had probably portrayed her character. But no matter what, he was still a son who slept with someone else. Bo Jiao was still obedient. What would Goddess An like to hear? Sky City. Movie Queen seemed to have thought of something and smiled. Plays well too, a duet would be perfect. Aren't you going to compete? Let him back you up. In reality, Movie Queen wanted the two of them to be in the same frame so that Madam he would feel that they were a good match. Besides, the situation had been obvious. Someone was bullying Joe. What kind of joke was that? She couldn't even bear to make things difficult for the child, how could she allow him to be bullied? During this time, Guo Rong and Yi Sihua's expressions had changed several times. The moment Movie Queen finished her sentence, the mother and son froze. Yang Huan wanted to say something. Sister An, Huan, regardless of the situation, you have to know how to treat your guests. You did well when you were young, but now that you've grown up, you seem to have forgotten. Movie Queen glanced up at her. With just that one glance, Yang Huan's face burned. Everyone present knew that he was going to stop when the time was right. As the host of the banquet, her actions had been overboard. Yang Huan hadn't expected He Honghua's son to know her, Sister An, the heir of the biggest financial group. On the other side, Qin Mo was already seated beside her, playing the first sound test. Yi Sihua's face turned pale. He knew he wasn't Qin Mo's match. But taking a step back, it wasn't a bad thing for him. Based on his understanding of the country bumpkin, he wouldn't be able to follow Qin Mo's tune. That way, the country bumpkin would be the one making a fool of himself. With that, Yi Sihua's lips curved upwards. But in the next second, the silver-haired youngster pressed the keys, her fingers gliding over the piano like water. Her hair fell softly behind her ears, her fair neck, her distinct collarbones, every joint flawless. The youngster in the white suit seemed to have been poisoned with every glance. The youngster's tune was ethereal and pleasant, penetrating into one's heart. The scene Yi Sihua was expecting didn't happen. On the contrary, after hearing the sound of the guqin, everyone looked towards the center. The scene in front of him was indeed too beautiful. It was as though all the lights had been drawn out of the ensemble by the two men at the piano. The silver-haired youngster glanced over with a smile. Even the noble Qin Mo seemed to have a liveliness to him. The people present had also listened to all kinds of concerts. This was the first time they had heard such a concert. The coordination between the two did not have the slightest bit of interruption. Their smooth movements reverberated in everyone's ears. Everyone could not help but close their eyes to enjoy it. There was even a professional piano teacher among them. Yi Sihua's face turned paler as more and more people surrounded him. Someone pointed out, Yi Sihua's piano skills aren't as good as his. At that moment, Yi Sihua felt as though he had been slapped in front of everyone. He had mocked her at the start of the concert, but now, he had returned everything. There was a saying that had come true for him. After the youngster was done, he couldn't play anymore. Yi Sihua was aware of the situation. He didn't have the youngster's familiarity with the piano keys and wasn't confident that everyone would be engrossed when he played. The coordination between the two of them was too good. Their tacit understanding was not only flawless, but their faces also made them look like a pair of princes. In reality, this wasn't the first time Bo Jiao had played with the Almighty. But it had been a long time. The Almighty had long forgotten that she knew how to play the piano. From a certain perspective, he was the one who had taught her. Back then, he hadn't liked to play with her. In order to attract his pet's attention, she had done many things. One time, she had messed with his piano. In the end, he had grabbed her hand and pressed it against the piano keys. Which girl doesn't know how to play the piano? From today onwards, learn well and don't play with the English people next door, do you hear me? I don't know which keys are which. Stupid, yes, she had been playing the piano since she was young and the Almighty had taught her step by step. How could she be any worse than Yi Sihua? Another note fell. Qin Mo glanced over, his fingers touching someone's. It was at that moment. He found it strangely familiar. All of a sudden, something seemed to jump into his mind. Who had he ever sat with like this? Chapter 932. The blurry memory seemed to be separated by mist. He looked to be less than 5 years old. He was sitting beside the piano with a person in his arms. The person seemed to be a little younger than him. Her head was moving around and was very disobedient. He was holding the person's fingers and trying to memorize the notes on the piano. Momo, playing the piano is boring. Let's go look for William, his dog is fun to chase. We'll go after we finish. It'll be late by the time we finish, I still have to climb the wall. You'll have curry rice after you finish. You can decide if you want to play with William or stay here to eat curry rice. He heard himself asking the person to make the choice in an aloof manner. The person's head drooped for a second before she lifted it again. I want to eat curry rice, but it's not fun to play the piano all the time. Let's take a break, I'll play Super Mario with you, but tomorrow at this time, you can't go to William's house. You have to come over and learn the piano. Which girl doesn't know how to play the piano? From today onwards, learn well and don't play with the Englishman next door, do you hear me? The last part was his voice. As it was too sudden, a sharp pain shot through his head, causing him to freeze. Even though there weren't any other reactions, his pale and handsome side profile made Bojio realize his discomfort. Bojio glanced over and asked in a low voice, Brother Mo? The pain only lasted for a moment. Qin Mo pressed his long fingers between his brows. Nothing. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and straightened his back. For some reason, he felt like rubbing the young man's furry head. Qin Mo did the same. You played well. The sudden approach made Bojio pause. The warmth on her head was obvious, just like how he had done it when they were young. His breath drifted over and she could feel the warmth. Bojio lifted her head, her eyes meeting the Almighty's deep gaze. She smiled and pressed her fist against his shoulder. Same to you. The scene was pleasing to the eyes. The atmosphere between the two of them was also unusual. It seemed like a scene from a manga. Almost everyone on the scene was applauding for their ensemble just now. One of the Englishmen held a wine glass in his hand. When he looked at Bojio, his gaze was indescribable. He even turned to his assistant excitedly and asked, Go and find out who this Asian boy is. It was a perfect match. Heavens! I feel like I've met the muse from the script. Yes, sir. I'll inquire at once. In fact, they decided to attend this gathering at the last minute because of an invitation from an investor. He didn't expect to receive such an unexpected reward. The assistant knew very well that the director had visited more than a dozen acting schools in China to find a role that matched the script. But he was satisfied with none of them. However, there was a Japanese actor that the director had listed as a candidate. That actor was originally a best actor, but the assistant knew that the director was not very satisfied. Until this youngster appeared, the assistant had never seen the director so excited before. It must be because he was too much in line with the character in his mind. He saw it when and came in just now. The middle-aged Englishman wanted to wait until the banquet was over before letting and be the middleman. The two of them didn't look for anyone, especially the middle-aged Englishman. This time, they had come silently to search for a role. They didn't want anyone to recognize them. With the director's international reputation, the moment the media caught sight of him, it wouldn't matter which country it was from, it would be publicized. This wouldn't be beneficial for them to find the person they needed. The Englishman thought to himself as he glanced at the young man with the devilish smile. He was really too perfect. When the time came, he would dye his hair black and wear the robes of the Republic of China. The mysterious Asian young man sitting in front of the piano would give off a sense of the overlapping of eras. This was the person he had been looking for. He didn't just have an angelic face, he also had a devilish aura. It was a pity that such a person wasn't acting. The Englishman was still excited about his discovery. He didn't know that there were people who had seen his photo and had tried to strike up a conversation with him on several occasions, but none of them had succeeded. It wasn't anyone else, it was Yi Sihua. If he had gone up after the two of them had finished their performance, he would have been asking for humiliation. Hence, before the piano stopped playing, Yi Sihua's men had already left the area. It was because he had retreated from the crowd that he saw the director he wanted to meet. It felt as though he had gone straight from hell to heaven. So what if movie Queen Anne's path was cut off? Now that the director was there, as long as he followed him closely and recommended himself, he would definitely have a chance. Yi Sihua was a man of action. With this thought in mind, he headed in the direction the Englishman had left. On the other side, movie Queen Anne, who was close to the director, had intentionally stood beside He Honghua at the start of the performance. She took advantage of the lingering warmth and smiled. My son used to have high standards, but ever since he met Joe, he changed. Madam, he has taught him well, raising a child like Joe who isn't afraid of my son at all. In the past, there were many people who wanted to be friends with Qin Mo, but they all had ulterior motives. Joe is different. That day, when I saw Qin Mo bring Joe home, I was shocked. After all, my son rarely gets along with anyone and Joe is an exception. But since Joe is so handsome and likable, my son must have been wondering how could there be someone better looking than him. Perhaps that was the reason why they became friends. Now that I think about it, it's amazing. Now that I think about it, it's amazing. He Honghua was shocked when she heard movie Queen Anne's first sentence. She had never expected movie Queen Anne to be Qin Mo's mother. The more He Honghua listened, the more she felt movie Queen Anne was different from the other madams she had interacted with. After all, this person was well-mannered, elegant and magnanimous. It wasn't just an act, but every word and action was embedded in her bones, making her feel comfortable to interact with. Movie Queen Anne intentionally made her son sound more pitiful. She sighed deeply. Madam, don't be fooled by how tall and strong my son is now. He was born prematurely in the past and I didn't take good care of him. With that, the two mothers found a common point of communication. He Honghua immediately said, my Joe was born prematurely too, he was so wrinkled that I was worried I wouldn't be able to take care of him. I guess so. Movie Queen Anne reached out and held He Honghua's hand. We have to interact more in the future, both of them are troublesome. He Honghua was delighted. That's right. Oh right, Sister He, I've heard about what happened to you. If you need any help, feel free to let me know. Movie Queen Anne was a capable person. She raised Madam He to Sister He without changing her expression. If it had been someone else, He Honghua would definitely be on her guard. Not only did this person look at her with sincerity, she was also beautiful. Most importantly, she didn't have anything on her that she was concerned about. Her warmth made He Honghua feel as though they were old friends at first sight. There wasn't the slightest bit of pretense. In reality, Movie Queen Anne was indeed such a person. I have long wanted to speak to Sister He and have thought of paying you a visit, but I was afraid it would be too abrupt. Today, I heard that Sister He would be attending the banquet, so I specially came over to befriend Sister He. Movie Queen Anne wasn't just expressing her sincerity to He Honghua, she was also saying it for Guorong, who was standing beside them. The way she had asked Joe to move away from the piano was clearly an act of contempt. Movie queen and didn't feel the need to give her any face. At that moment, it wasn't just Guorong, even Yang Huan's face turned pale after hearing the entire story. It had to be said that Movie Queen Anne's words were a slap to the face, leaving no room for negotiation. On the other hand, He Honghua was the most generous and straightforward. You should have said so earlier. If you had said so earlier, we would have met at home. I don't know anything else, but I know how to cook. When you come to my house, Sister He will cook for you. That would be great. I love to eat, but that's the disadvantage of being an actress. There are so many things I want to eat, but I can't eat them immediately. Movie Queen Anne's tone was coquettish. Take today for example, I just want to eat scrambled eggs with tomatoes. I can't even find that kind of home-cooked taste outside. He Honghua was honest. She immediately replied, that's easy, if you want to eat, come over tomorrow. Can we eat tonight? After Movie Queen Anne asked, she felt that it wasn't polite. I'm disturbing Sister He, I'll eat tomorrow. He Honghua couldn't bear to see the beauty in such a state. It's not disturbing, I just need time to prepare the ingredients. It isn't too late, if you really want to eat, let's go home. I'll have to trouble Sister He then. Movie Queen Anne held He Honghua's hand and smiled. She looked like a helpless little bird. Bo Jiu raised a brow as she walked over. Go home for dinner? What was going on? What was going on? When did her mother and the Almighty's mother become so close? In the time she had been playing the piano, the two of them were already calling each other sisters, completely disregarding her and the Almighty. That was indeed the case. The two of them chatted for a while before deciding on the itinerary. Even though Bo Jiu didn't think it was a good idea to attend such a banquet. She was still a little confused when her mother shoved her into the car so quickly. She glanced sideways at the Almighty, who was sitting beside her. His face was expressionless, handsome and elegant as usual. Was she making a fuss out of nothing? Bo Jiu arched a brow. The four of them sat in Movie Queen Anne's car, a Bentley. Even the chauffeur was an old subordinate of the Qin family. His aura was undoubtedly the most graceful among all the guests. Yang Huan came personally to send them off. In reality, she didn't want Movie Queen Anne to leave, but there was something she had to mention. Mrs. He, I'm sorry for my negligence, I hope you won't take it to heart. He Honghua knew very well why Yang Huan said that. It was all for the sake of her younger sister Anne. Hence, He Honghua didn't reply, merely smiling. People with different principles couldn't make plans together. In the future, she wouldn't attend such banquets and she wouldn't befriend Yang Huan. That was all. It was understandable for Yang Huan to come out since she was acquainted with Movie Queen Anne. But Guorong followed, afraid that her son wouldn't have a chance once Movie Queen Anne left. Without a second thought, she pressed the car window. Madam Anne, I have a private matter to discuss with you, may I know when you are free? Guorong's actions weren't polite at all. However, she didn't realize it herself. She emphasized in a self-centered manner, it's about my son. Please make time, Madam Anne. Movie Queen Anne was perplexed by his words. She smiled. We aren't close and I don't have the obligation to talk to you about your son. Let's go. Guorong watched as the Bentley was about to leave, fuming. How can she be like that? Her voice drifted into the car. Even Movie Queen Anne wasn't fond of such people. She always believed that everyone in the world should help her and that it wasn't good if they didn't. As compared to such a two-faced person, her in-law was much better. He spoke his mind and was magnanimous. Even though he was careless, he understood the bigger picture. Movie Queen Anne felt that there was nothing wrong with her son and Jiu being together. Even if the gender wasn't ideal. But there wasn't anything else to pick on. Her in-law was easy to get along with. Movie Queen Anne's next step was to think of a way to win her over, to ask her about her thoughts and try to get her to accept as soon as possible. Bo Jiu didn't know what Movie Queen Anne was thinking, but from the looks of it, Movie Queen Anne was indeed too passionate towards her mother. She had called her sister He so intimately. Was scrambled eggs with tomatoes that attractive? Bojo didn't understand movie Queen Anne's actions. It didn't mean Chin Mo didn't understand, but it wasn't the time to point it out since there were still people around. Especially the person beside him, who was still thinking of escaping. It wasn't suitable for her to know his intentions. If he forced her even more, it would be troublesome if he allowed her to leave. Chin Mo's method was straightforward. He would settle her down and not allow her to go anywhere. Once she was completely his, he would talk about other things. With that in mind, Chin Mo reached his hand out, grabbing onto her hand without a change in expression. There wasn't any emotion on his face. There wasn't much emotion on his face, but when his long and narrow eyes looked towards Bojo, it was obvious that he was telling her to be quiet. Bojo didn't retract her hand because that would attract the attention of the two parents in front. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.